Su Zixin, on the other hand, realized that Resident Evil 1 movie version was quickly unlocked in the Super Theater after she paid. She quickly clicked into the movie. Then, she saw a red and white icon appear before her. This icon was often seen in the mansion of Resident Evil 1, it was the Umbrella Corporation's logo. However, all that showed on Su Zixin's computer screen was a poster and nothing else. Fang Qi froze for a second, it's encrypted. He originally wanted to find out the difference between the system's version of the movie and the version he had seen before in his previous life, but it seemed like he had to watch it on the computer himself. The good news was, although his system was stingy, as the owner of the internet cafe, everything was free for him. Therefore, he turned on one of the vacant computers. At the beginning of the 21st century, the Umbrella Corporation had become the largest for-profit corporation in the United States. The movie began. Su Zixin realized that not only could she see all this background information, this knowledge flowed into her brain and allowed her to understand every word that was being said. 9 out of 10 family used its products. Its political and financial influence is felt everywhere. In public, it is the world's leading supplier of computer technology and healthcare products. Unknown to a lot of its own employees, its massive profits were generated by military technology, genetic experimentation, and biochemical weaponry. I see now. After watching this background information, Su Zixin even understood what biochemical weaponry and genetic experimentation were. It was as if she learned this knowledge through reading a book, but it was clearly reflected in her mind. Soon, she realized that she was at a research base. A researcher wearing an exposure suit was at the control desk, taking out light blue and green test tubes, one by one. Although this person was wearing the uniform of a researcher, he didn't seem like one. Rather, he looked like a thief. After taking all the test tubes, that man threw out a blue test tube, which smashed into pieces upon contacting the metal platform. If Fang Qi were watching, he would immediately recognize that it was a test tube containing the T virus. The light blue liquid slowly vaporized and flowed into each of the labs through the vents. Quickly realizing that something was wrong, all the tunnels were closed, trapping all possible people who were infected inside the underground lab in an attempt to stop the virus from spreading. When the search and rescue team sent by the Umbrella Corporation arrived, Resident Evil began. Su Zixin felt like she had traveled into another space, and everything was happening right in front of her. It was such a surreal feeling. Aside from the fact that she couldn't touch anyone or anything, she felt like she was inside a new world. She could clearly see everything that was happening between the main characters. She had to admit that the movie version of Resident Evil made her more nervous. Su Zixin stood before the researchers, they couldn't see her, but she could see all of them. She saw them slowly turn into zombies. She saw the entire process. She felt a despair, seeing them transform but not being able to do anything about it. The thought of these humans in here all changing into zombies brought goosebumps onto her skin. It was scary enough to see zombies in the game. But all these people here would soon turn into zombies, this was a zombie horde. A few zombies were hard enough to defeat, what were they going to do about a zombie horde? She couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Thank goodness that I don't have to experience this for myself, this isn't somewhere a human should be. It was hell. Although she knew that the zombies couldn't hurt her, it was still horrifying to see them. When she saw the main characters barge into this hell of a laboratory, she couldn't help but worry about them. When she saw that the African American team member get dismembered in the laser hallway, she shrieked in fear. What kind of weapon is this? Everything in the movie was magical, a few streaks of light could dismember a human being. These weapons aren't guns, what kind of spiritual artifacts are they? Then, the Red Queen, who controlled everything, was turned off by a little black box? Her understanding of this entire world changed. At the same time, Fang Qi was watching the movie as well. He noticed that although the movie looked like the original version, it was actually quite different. For example, the combat looked too realistic and too terrifying. Even though Fang Qi learned most of Chris's combat skills, he could still learn a lot from watching the movie. Yes, he could learn them. Fang Qi noticed that combat experiences and skills flowed into his mind like invisible knowledge streams. Their shooting skills, their movements, and their steps were meticulous and accurate as well. It was so meticulous that Fang Qi thought this wasn't a movie. Rather, it was a real battle that was happening somewhere on Earth. The system never disappoints. Fang Qi couldn't help but exclaim. At this moment, Su Zixin saw countless zombies being released. As the flood of zombies appeared and dismembered the skilled teammates, the movie reached its climax. Soon, the lickers were released as well. These monsters weren't as powerful as hunters, but their speed was much faster. So fast that humans couldn't even react to it. Therefore, they could easily dodge bullets. With steel-breaking sharp claws and horrifying tongues, these monsters were murder machines. Any human would die at its touch. This is so scary. I didn't think there would be monsters as scary as these ones aside from the hunters. They can dodge bullets. Su Zixin's heart was in her throat this entire time. When she saw the main character run away with the last remaining team member, Mark, she let out a sigh of relief. However, the final scene appeared, the entire city became a land of zombies. Everyone turned into zombies. Everything that she was worried about happened before her eyes. It was shocking. It was as if she was the only one left in this world, and that terrible feeling of loneliness ate her up like a flood. Is this the end of the world? She felt the pressure, and her breathing became rapid as she felt like doomsday was coming. In the end, the main character was the only human left in the city. This scene replayed again and again in her mind. After a long time, Su Zixin suddenly heard a familiar voice sounding from beside her. Zixin, how was it? Was it good? Ching ching. She turned around and grabbed Shen Qingqing's hand emotionally. The movie version of Resident Evil 1 is so shocking. I never thought that the plot would be like this. Is it really that good? Shen Qingqing was confused. Didn't the main character change? How can it still be good? It's good. Su Zixin said, did you know what we were worried about really happened? It was shocking. The entire city was infected. Everyone turned into zombies. I really want to know what would happen to the main character in the next movie. The last scene of the movie left Su Zixin somewhat emotional. Fang Qi Internet Cafe wasn't as noisy as the ones he went to on Earth, and everyone was quietly playing their games. Therefore, what Su Zixin said caught people's attention. You witnessed what happened to the main character with your own eyes. The T-virus was leaked. Everyone was infected by the zombie virus. Zombie horde? End of the world. Although they only heard snippets of what she said, they were all still dumbstruck. The sheer number of zombies in the game gave them a headache, but there was a zombie horde in the movie version? How much scarier did it have to be? Song Qingfeng and the others, who didn't care for the movie version and were unhappy about the change in main characters, became curious at this. What are you talking about? A zombie horde? After seeing what happened the last 2 mornings, Liang Shi and his friends came slightly later. However, out of the 6 of them, 2 didn't have spots to sit because they came too late. The new Resident Evil 1 movie. Lin Xiao explained. He was hesitating as he asked his friends, should we watch it as well? Well, I'm a little tired from playing the game anyways. Lin Xiao and the others made little progress in the game. Therefore, they wanted to watch the movie and find out what the difference was. It's not the same story. As soon as Liang Shi and the others heard this, they shook their heads. They were waiting for a continuation of the game. What was so good about something that wasn't even a part of the original game plot? The movie cost 3 crystals on its own. Incorporating that to the crystals they had to pay to use the computers, the total number of crystals needed for the movie was high and not worth the money for Liang Shi and his friends. Although what Su Zixin said sparked the interest of many, people had different opinions. Su Zixin might like it, but that didn't mean everyone would as well. Moreover, everyone present were avid gaming fans of Resident Evil 1. As soon as they heard that the main character changed, they lost interest, and most people decided to observe first. Therefore, only Lin Xiao, Su Luo, Shen Qingqing, and a couple others watched the movie. The equipment in here is so high-end. Did they research the T-virus here? This is so inhumane. How can they lock everyone in the lab and just let them become zombies? They were shocked to see humans transforming into zombies. If Resident Evil 1 was a scary game with a new theme, then Resident Evil 1, movie version was an unimaginable and horrifying calamity. Everyone they saw in the game were heroes, and there was an amazing happy ending. However, what they saw in the movie was a giant catastrophe. Everything they were worried about and everything they assumed about the T-virus became reality. 1 second ago, these people had their own thoughts and feelings. However, in the next second, they had become monsters that were mindless and ravenous. To some extent, the shock that this movie brought onto its viewers was even more than the game. However, they noticed that although the humans in this world didn't practice warrior chi, their combat skills were still as amazing as could be. Aside from knowing their enemies, the main characters were also aware of their surrounding environments. More often than not, victory was determined by the tiny details. The physical and gunfights left the viewers in a daze, and the intense escape left them deeply absorbed. They didn't want to miss any details. In the end, when everyone turned into zombies, they were still recovering from the shock. How was it? Song Qingfeng calculated the time and couldn't help but ask, I told you that it wasn't going to be good, didn't I? It was amazing. To his surprise, Lin Xiao's face lit up. The contents of the game are just the tip of an iceberg, there is a bigger world in the movie. Just now, I experienced everything the main character experienced. A world that is on the edge of extinction. Biochemical viruses threatened the world. Is it that good? Should we try as well? Li Xi and Li Ping glanced at each other. Is it really that good? Song Qingfeng was still unconvinced. For these rich young people, 3 crystals weren't a lot, but it wasn't nothing. Spending that amount of money to buy the plot of Resident Evil 1 was enough to prove how much they liked this series, but not everyone had that much money. Wang Tai and other players who didn't have that much crystals were still on the fence about watching the movie. After all, playing the game was good for their cultivation. The movie, on the other hand, was just for fun. Although they were curious, they couldn't spend 3 crystals just like that. Dejected, Wang Tai asked, Qi, can't we watch the movie through someone else's screen, just like how we can watch others play? Fang Qi replied helplessly, I can't do anything about that. After all, the system was the one who did everything. Suddenly, a shriek came from beside him. Zixin! Did you just kill a hunter with a dagger? Shen Qingqing was shocked. Not only did Su Zixin kill a hunter with a dagger, it was the first time that she saw one. Although the process was difficult, it was still shocking. What? Someone killed a hunter with a dagger? Aside from the owner, who else could kill a hunter with a dagger without using their warrior chi? Upon hearing this shriek, everyone turned their attention to Su Zixin's screen. Although Jill in the screen wasn't in a good condition, the hunter did die in front of her. They could see that aside from knife cuts, there weren't any other injuries on the hunter. Is it really Su Zixin? As a veteran player, a lot of people recognized her. How can she be so fast? Song Qingfeng couldn't help but feel shocked and unwilling. He practiced for so long already but still couldn't kill the hunter with his dagger. No matter how much warrior chi Su Zixin had, she still couldn't use it in the game. He used to be the player with the fastest progress, right after Fang Qi. However, he had been stuck with the hunters and wasted a lot of time, enabling others to catch up to him. However, he wasn't worried because everyone had to pass the hunters with only daggers. Or else, they would run out of powerful bullets when fighting the tyrant and wouldn't be able to beat the game. But now, someone killed a hunter with a dagger, surpassing him? He couldn't accept this, no matter what. Shen Qingqing exclaimed, "How did you do that?" I think. Confused, Su Zixin recalled how she killed this hunter. I think after I watched the entire movie, the main character's combat skills seemed to have been imprinted in my head. I feel like I can control my character more flexibly and diligently. Upon hearing this, they all thought about how their skills improved after playing the Resident Evil 1 virtual reality remake. Did the movie have the same effects? This is cheating. At this thought, Song Qingfeng shouted righteously, "Sir, you're forcing me to watch the movie." Fang Qi shrugged. "I'm not, every transaction at my shop is voluntary." Song Qingfeng's face darkened. Lin Xiao and Su Luo laughed loudly. "Young Master Song, just give in. The movie is really good." "Young Master Song." Li Xi smiled, "Let's watch the movie together. If you're not happy afterward, we can teach these people a lesson." "Fine, fine." Finally, Song Qingfeng succumbed to peer pressure and took out 3 crystals. "I'd like to say that I'm watching to improve my skills, and I'm not at all interested in the contents of the movie." Half an hour later. "Oh my god, there are so many zombies. Look at her shooting skills. The main character is so cool. What the hell is this? It's even stronger than the hunters. Look how she dodged the bullet, it's so cool." After the movie, Lin Xiao and Su Luo immediately asked him, "Young Master Song, what do you think?" Song Qingfeng's face darkened as he replied, a little embarrassed, "It's not too bad." "Really? It's just a little interesting." Lin Xiao and Su Luo burst into laughter. "Screw you! I'm going to kill hunters now." Song Qingfeng looked even more gloomy. Soon, in the screen, Song Qingfeng held a dagger in his hand. Although there was blood all over his body, a hunter fell dead under his feet. He had been waiting for this for a long time. Although he couldn't kill hunters as swiftly as Fang Qi did, one of these powerful monsters was killed by him. He had to admit that it was a giant improvement. He was doing even better than Su Zixin. "I did it." Song Qingfeng let out a sigh of relief. Watching the main character's battle is really helpful. Song Qingfeng was left speechless. "I feel like I'm a lot stronger when it comes to combat." "Really?" Upon seeing that players were starting to kill hunters with daggers one after another, Liang Shi couldn't sit still any longer. "Sir, I want to watch Resident Evil 1 movie version as well." Liang Shi felt like crying. If he kept spending crystals like this, he was going to run out of his savings. "Me too." Wang Tai finally couldn't take it anymore and clenched his teeth. "Me first." The loyal gaming fans finally began to give in. "Oh my god, the quality of this movie is just as good as the game. There's also a lot more background information. I finally know what the biochemical crisis is. Look at this scene. Is it just a novel? How did the author think of this? Although the main character changed, it's still amazing. I almost fell asleep reading the most popular novel, Celestial Warrior, but this. I'm getting more excited the more I watch. This laboratory is much more dangerous than the mansion. Wait, I'm falling for this cool foreign girl. Her movements are so swift and crisp." Right now, there were quite a few people in Fang Qi Internet Cafe. He was relieved that he added the new rule about waiting in line. Moreover, everyone was aware of the 6-hour rule and the midnight closing time. Fang Qi was glad that they were all abiding by the rules. Therefore, although the internet cafe was busy, the players who were waiting discussed amongst themselves and didn't cause any chaos. During this time, the internet cafe became the most packed. However, players who arrived afterward were depressed upon seeing how many people were waiting to play. That was when Xi and his friends came. After seeing the internet cafe at full capacity, his expression froze. It's still full. Dejected, he pointed at the blackboard and asked, "Sir, we have to stand in line now." Fang Qi laughed. "Sorry, there are too many people." It didn't seem like he had a choice. Xi Qi looked depressed, he couldn't do anything but to wait in line. "Sir, you're out of seats already." The man with the mustache froze as soon as he entered. Not only were the seats all full, there weren't a lot of spots left for watching. He smiled bitterly and suggested, "Sir, I think you need to expand your shop." Fang Qi nodded in agreement. "I think so too. There is nowhere for me to play right now either." "Sir, when can you add a few more computers?" Frequent customers like Liang Shi began worrying as well. The good news was, although there were a lot of people in the shop, they all abided by the rules. Therefore, the atmosphere in the internet cafe wasn't bad, allowing Fang Qi to run the place with peace of mind. Probably in the next couple of days. That's good. Liang Shi looked around at the people standing behind him and felt a headache as well. Quickly, Xi Qi noticed that the people here were talking about new things and heard new vocabulary like movie version and Alice. Therefore, he immediately asked, "Sir, there's a new game." Fang Qi shook his head and smiled as he pointed at the second line on his blackboard. 2 1-hour costs 2 crystals. Activating Resident Evil 1 costs 5 crystals. Purchasing Resident Evil 1, movie version costs 3 crystals. Each person can only play for 6 hours per day. Is that clear enough? Movie version. Confused, Xi Qi looked over at Fang Qi, seemingly interested. "What's that?" "The game took place in the outskirts of Raccoon City, right?" Fang Qi explained, "The movie talks about what happened inside the Raccoon City, but you can only watch and not play. I can only watch what the main characters experience." Xi Qi asked, "What's the fun in that? Isn't it more fun if I can play by myself?" Xi Qi lost interest in the movie version, so he stopped asking questions. Just then, the square-faced young man standing beside him exclaimed, "Song Qingfeng just killed a giant snake. Oh my god! It was so big!" Song Qingfeng used to be hindered by the difficult-to-defeat hunters. However, as his combat skills improved, he picked up his pace and began to kill all the hunters that he couldn't kill before. "I think I'll be able to pass the level soon." Song Qingfeng felt a little excited as he mumbled to himself. Song Qingfeng's character was faced with a gigantic snake, its mouth was wider than an adult man's shoulders, and it was capable of swallowing an entire human with one bite. Song Qingfeng calmly dodged the snake's attacks with great agility. "No one can be compared to his skills, right?" a young warrior exclaimed. This warrior looked unfamiliar, today seemed to be his first day here. "Don't BS. The owner killed the tyrant without getting hurt, but Song Qingfeng had already been struck by that snake. He's obviously not as good as the owner," Blackie said. "He saw the way Fang Qi killed the tyrant the other day. Is the owner that good?" The warrior was unconvinced since he was shocked by Song Qingfeng's skills. Song Qingfeng was able to dodge the snake perfectly after learning his lesson. "I think when Song Qingfeng fights the tyrant, he won't be injured either," another newbie who started playing Resident Evil 1 just yesterday said. They were obviously classmates. Qingfeng is considered a genius in the Lingyun Academy, he's one of the top 5 students. A game like this won't easily defeat him. Exactly, you didn't see how Song Qingfeng killed the hunter with his dagger just now. The more he does it, the easier it seems. "Hey, look at that girl," another student from the Lingyun Academy said, "I think she's a senior from the Xian house. She's going to encounter the snake soon too, right?" Xi Qi felt like crying as a surge of jealousy overtook him. It has only been a day, why is everyone killing hunters with daggers already? He, on the other hand, had only just killed the first boss. Wait, the owner plays this too. The man with the mustache heard this from the others and was a little surprised. Is it weird that I play? Fang Qi found it amusing. But there are too many people in the shop, I only get to play in the morning or evening when there are less people. Aside from early morning and late night, his shop was at full capacity. Of course, he didn't tell the others that he often played after the shop closed. Unwilling to give up, the man with the mustache asked, "Are you really not going to consider selling your computers?" Fang Qi smiled and shook his head. "I don't want to leave Zhuhua City anymore." The man with the mustache smiled bitterly. "Is there Resident Evil 2? Fang Qi replied, "Of course there is. When will you get it?" Upon hearing Fang Qi's response, Liang Shi, Xi Qi, and the others all surrounded him. Fang Qi pointed at the ceiling. "Ask him. Ask the heavens." Liang Shi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Originally, a group of people stood behind and watched as Song Qingfeng played. Now that the people who were playing were reaching their time limits, everyone found their seats and stopped watching him. Song Qingfeng and the others' time limits are almost up, right? Xi Qi came here at this time because he was waiting for Song Qingfeng and the others to finish. He pointed at Song Qingfeng and asked Fang Qi, "Sir, how much time do they have left?" Fang Qi looked at the time. 1 minute. F***ck, why did you have to ask? Upon hearing that his time was about to be up, Lin Xiao almost went crazy. "You don't want your time to be up?" Xi Qi couldn't help but laugh. "Would you like me to take my question back?" "Screw you." Lin Xiao's face darkened as he got off his chair. Xi Qi and the others laughed and quickly got into the seats, afraid that someone else would take their spot. Then, they turned around and smiled at Song Qingfeng and the others. "Bye. Go away." Xi Qi came with at least a dozen others. Of course, half of them were just curious as to what this shop did and didn't have the urge to play. Therefore, they surrounded Xi Qi and his other friends. As soon as Xi Qi got onto the computer, he quickly opened the game and began lecturing the young men behind him. "Look at this, this is a handgun. It's as powerful as a warrior-level martial arts technique and can shoot through a person's head. Most importantly, it's extremely fast. I already have a Magnum revolver, how can you flaunt your samurai edge handgun in front of these people?" Lin Xiao, who didn't leave yet, immediately mumbled upon hearing what Xi Qi said. Xi Qi almost spat out blood. He replied coldly, "I thought your time was up, shouldn't you be going now?" Su Luo laughed, "Our time may be up, but we're allowed to watch, right? The owner didn't say we couldn't." Xi Qi replied angrily, "Fine, fine, good for you. I bet you were just like this when you first played as well. There's so many people here." Lan Yan and Nalan Mingxiu were shocked by what they saw upon walking into this little shop. Most importantly, no one came to greet them when they came in. Customers were huddled in circles doing God knows what, and the owner was chit-chatting with them. Weirdly enough, this place didn't seem to be in a mess at all. It was just popular. Nalan Mingxiu's calm gaze landed on the blackboard by the door. "This place is interesting. Don't you think it's weird?" Lan Yan didn't understand what was happening. She followed Nalan Mingxiu's gaze and saw the writing on the blackboard as well. "It cost so many crystals to just try the game out, what a rip-off. How did the owner have the audacity to write if you want to play, play. If you don't, leave?" What is more outrageous is there are so many customers scrambling to play. "Look, are those students from Ling Yun Academy?" Lan Yan's eyes widened in disbelief. "Do you think that they were talking about this place this entire time? Why is this shop so popular?" Aside from using demonic magic to enchant people, she couldn't think of any other reason. However, everything and everyone in this shop was so well ordered, it really didn't seem capable of creating anything evil. She sneered, "This small shop is so tasteless." Fang Qi noticed the people who walked in. A tall, skinny woman walked in front. She was extremely beautiful but emitted an icy chill that made it hard for others to approach her. As soon as he saw her, Fang Qi had a feeling that she had a high status. However, she gave off a feeling that was different from Song Qingfeng and other the rich young men. Perhaps that was similar to the difference between the moon and the stars. When she walked in, she didn't set her eyes at one place. Instead, she observed everything around her, Song Qingfeng and the others who were sucking up to Fang Qi, Xi Qi who was intently playing the game, and Fang Qi who was lying in his giant armchair with a calm expression on his face. This girl isn't simple, the men with the mustache advised Fang Qi quietly, she might not be here with good intentions. Fang Qi, on the other hand, shrugged and laughed, in my shop, aside from me, there are only customers. Are you here to play the game or watch the movie? Fang Qi said calmly, I'm sorry, we're out of seats right now. If you want to try, you'll have to wait. Lan Yan's expression darkened, she had never seen an owner like Fang Qi. Moreover, how could a game cost so much? Did he just ask them to wait? Did he just ask them, the people of the Nalan family, to wait? Lan Yan didn't understand. Xi Xiaoyun sat down beside Su Zixin and watched her kill multiple hunters with her dagger. Finally, she couldn't help but ask, Senior sister, why is everyone a lot stronger today than they were before? Because of the new movie, Su Zixin replied casually, there's a great deal of combat techniques in the movie. We were stuck at the hunters, but after watching the movie, we all learned how to kill hunters with our daggers. That's amazing. Isn't that like the legendary warrior inheritance? Xi Xiaoyun exclaimed. A little similar, but the movie version is really good. There's also a zombie horde and a new type of monster type called lickers. Su Zixin played her game as she introduced the movie to Xi Xiaoyun. It was rare for a girl to come to the internet cafe, so she naturally wanted to talk to this cute, clever girl. Would you like to try? Is the movie version really that good? Xi Qi, who was fully immersed in his game, suddenly asked. No wonder Song Qingfeng and the others became so much better today, could it be because of the movie? Sir, how do I watch the movie? They immediately asked Fang Qi. Lin Xiao and his friends, who were laughing at Xi Qi just now, suddenly felt speechless. They found out, everyone who came early knows about it, how much longer did you think you could keep it a secret? Song Qingfeng rolled his eyes at Lin Xiao and Su Luo. The crowd occasionally discussed amongst themselves, it wasn't loud, but others could hear them clearly. Warrior inheritance. Lan Yan was shocked. How could this little shop be involved with a warrior inheritance? What warrior inheritance? She came back to her senses. Then, her expression darkened as she said to Nalan Mingxiu, this shop sure put in work to confuse and bewitch people. It's just a small shop, how can it be involved with a warrior inheritance? She thought. If you don't know how to talk, just don't talk. Fang Qi walked up just in time to hear their conversation. His face twitched as he pointed at the blackboard. The rules are clearly written here, if you want to play, play. If you don't, you can leave. First, you make others curious. Then, you pretend to be almighty and ask the customer to leave, Lan Yan said as she looked Fang Qi up and down, you're young, but you sure are manipulative. Fang Qi was speechless, autistic. What did you say? Although Lan Yan didn't know what autistic means, she knew Fang Qi wasn't praising her. Therefore, her hand immediately moved to her sword handle by her waist. Fang Qi didn't care at all and pointed at the blackboard again, pretending not to see what she just did. The consequence of causing trouble here is written on this board, think about it before you take out your sword. Lan Yan glanced over at the blackboard again and smiled in disdain, asked to never return? Is this the protest of the week? Ignorance, sure is bliss. Fang Qi was at a loss for words. He waved his hand in the air and said, do whatever you want to. Someone is causing trouble. Liang Shi's face darkened as he stood up. Who has the guts to cause trouble here? Song Qingfeng looked over. Are you sick of living? Wu Shan glanced over as well. The shop was small to begin with, so the customers quickly heard what was happening by the door and all looked over in an unfriendly manner. This shop seems to be busy, but they're all your actors. Lan Yan realized what was happening. Do you think I would be scared of you? Go back to what you're doing. Fang Qi immediately glared at the people who were playing and said, no one can cause trouble in this shop, including you guys. Liang Shi froze for a second before saying dejectedly, Sir, we're trying to help you here. Wu Shan complained, what kind of rule is this? Don't be rash. Song Qingfeng's face froze upon seeing Nalan Mingxiu. Even he had to be careful of the girl in white. The owner is trying to help you all, just look at the emblem on her sword. A rock bird on top and a python on the bottom? She's from the Nalan family. The crowd immediately gasped, and the angry people immediately went back to what they were doing. Upon seeing the crowd quieting down, Lan Yan looked at Fang Qi scornfully. Your people are useless. Fang Qi's expression was calm, no one could tell what he was thinking. Everyone has to abide by the rules of my shop. What about you? Lan Yan smiled as she looked at Fang Qi. Do you have the abide by the rules as well? I'm sorry, Fang Qi laughed, if it's not absolutely necessary, I won't resort to force either. Are you looking down on me? Lan Yan tightened her hand around the hilt of the sword. She was prepared to draw her sword any time now. How dare he laugh at a time like this? She wanted to teach this arrogant shop owner a lesson. Once he learns how to respect someone above him, then we can talk. However, not only did Fang Qi not back down, the smile on his face became brighter than ever. Lan Yan, suddenly, a beautiful female voice sounded quietly from behind them. Then, a hand as white as snow pressed on Lan Yan's sword, stopping the latter from taking it out. All of Lan Yan's warrior qi that was shooting toward Fang Qi was pushed into the air and transformed into a breeze, almost blowing Fang Qi's shirt up. All of the tension disappeared into thin air. Standing behind everyone, the warrior in the blue-grayish robe who had a sword on his back squinted his eyes and moved his hand away from the hilt of his sword. Did you see what happened? The owner didn't move, he didn't even blink. Blackie exclaimed quietly. The owner is a skilled warrior, we've known this for a long time, Liang Shi replied, not just anyone can kill the tyrant and leave with no injuries. His face remained unchanged in front of a crisis. Wu Shan chimed in, he's skilled all right. Truth be told, I've never seen the owner use his skills in real life. Blackie was a little disappointed that he didn't get to see a fight. I thought we were going to see it this time, why did he stop? This girl looks cold and haughty, but she's smarter than everyone here. Song Qingfeng sneered as he turned to Blackie. We're all Resident Evil players, so I will give you some advice. Don't think about causing trouble, this girl might turn you into a corpse. I won't. Blackie laughed. The owner may be powerful, but he can't be that calm. Song Qingfeng squinted his eyes at Fang Qi, he was the most familiar with Fang Qi background. The owner is just a young man who is barely a warrior, there's no way he could improve so fast. There must be something else he's relying on. Song Qingfeng thought, it must be the cultivator behind him. Lan Yan didn't understand Nalan Mingxiu's actions. She asked, Ms. Nalan, why did you do that? A dark but deep light shone within Nalan Mingxiu's icy gaze. What Fang Qi said seemed to have touched her heartstrings. She slowly walked up and asked, if she takes out her sword, will she just be asked to never return? Although the word just isn't appropriate, Fang Qi couldn't help but laugh, but it is what it is. If you don't want to play, feel free to leave. My shop does not allow others to cause trouble. Okay, Nalan Mingxiu nodded her head. Then, we'll wait. What? Lan Yan thought she heard it wrong and looked at Nalan Mingxiu with a shocked expression on her face. We're waiting. The others were all dumbfounded as well. This woman said they'll wait? She is kidding, right? But they immediately saw Nalan Mingxiu nodding her head slightly. How can we? Lan Yan felt like her brain was going into overdrive. A place like this. After a while, she came back to her senses and looked around. Upon seeing the giant armchair that Fang Qi prepared for them, she asked, Ms. Nalan, would you like to sit here? Before her hand touched the chair, Fang Qi stopped her and said casually, this is my chair. He added, I'm sorry, there aren't that many chairs in my shop. Then, he sat down on his armchair comfortably and went back to ignoring them. You. Lan Yan's face turned green. Is he the owner or not? Are we the customers or not? She glared at Fang Qi with murderous intent, but the latter continued ignoring her. Origins. At the same time, a young man walked into Fang Qi Internet Cafe wearing a white shirt and a yellow robe. Behind him were two other young men wearing the same clothes. One was tall and skinny, and the other was short and chubby. It seemed like they were all from the same force. I heard a lot of people talking about a shop called Origins while I was at the Wind and Moon Pavilion. Xiao Yul's expression was filled with disdain as he said, I heard that this shop is quite magical. I'd like to see just how magical it is. He pushed open the door and quickly saw what was written on the blackboard. A rundown shop like this doesn't even accept gold? Just crystals. Who's the owner? He immediately shouted. Fang Qi's face lit up with surprise as he turned around. I am. A piece of jade was hung from this young man's waist, along with a green silk ribbon. His hair was tied with a small purple and gold crown. It was obvious that he was of prestigious status. When the three of them appeared, the auras that surrounded them immediately exposed their identities. They were cultivators. Fang Qi had been living around this secluded shop for years. Although he had seen some cultivators passing by, they were all in their carriages, and he had never seen their faces. This was Fang Qi's first time seeing cultivators this up close. Of course, Xiao Yul was more than an ordinary cultivator. He was the grandson of Xiao Chonglong, who is the Tiangang elder of Liu Yun Daoist Palace, a part of the Wu Wei Daoist Alliance. When Xiao Chonglong was young, he took part in the war that led to Dajin's establishment. Later, he was promoted to the elder position and acted as the festival wine chief in Daijing, the capital city, for as long as a century. Even when he retired and went back to his hometown, he still wielded great respect and authority in Daijing City and Jiangnan region. Are they cultivators? They're cultivators. Many in the shop weren't even qualified to speak with cultivators, and they were shocked. Even Song Qingfeng and the others' expression darkened. Normal cultivators were a lot easier to talk to, but Xiao Yul was different. He was hard to deal with. Xiao Yul frowned as he looked around scornfully. He didn't mind the nobles from prestigious families, but why were low-level warriors in this shop as well? When his gaze landed on Fang Qi, the disdain became more obvious than ever. I heard that your shop is interesting and magical. You're right, Fang Qi replied calmly. To him, this man was no more than an ordinary resident of the city. He gestured at the chubby young man behind him. Junior brother Lu, find out what's so magical about this rundown shop. Okay. That chubby man smiled. Come on, let me see what's so interesting about this shop. If I'm happy, everything will be great. If I'm not, there aren't any open spots right now. If you want to try, you have to line up at the back, Fang Qi interrupted him impatiently. Line up, this fatty Lu, along with the other people around him, were shocked by what they heard. This was now more than a matter of playing games. Fatty Lu laughed. Did this owner just ask me to line up? Doesn't he know who we are? Do you want to die? He grabbed Fang Qi's collar ferociously and said, just tell the other people to leave. Why do I have to line up? Fang Qi didn't respond, enraging Lu even more. How dare this owner of a small shop ask me to line up and ignore me as well? I can break your legs in a second. Do you think they're going to cause trouble? Blackie and the others were flabbergasted by what they saw. If he were really an idiot, he would be the king of idiots. After all, he was capable of smashing this little shop into pieces in the blink of an eye. Blackie didn't believe that Xiao Yulv would compromise like the rest of them did. Unlike the rest of them, even if Xiao Yulv and his two peers saw how magical the game was, they would try to take everything for themselves. Song Qingfeng, on the other hand, smiled without expressing his opinion. Then, they heard Fang Qi counting down. 3, 2, 1. Time's up, Fang Qi snickered as he looked at the fat guy in front of him, as if this guy was an idiot. Time's up. Everyone looked at them in confusion. What does that mean? Will Fang Qi really get into a fight with these cultivators? Prepare to die. This fatty Lu seemed to have realized something and decided to move first. He punched at Fang Qi's face. Troublemakers detected. Lightning punishment activated. Suddenly, an emotionless electronic voice sounded from the shop's loudspeakers. Ms. Nalan. Lan Yan backed off like a scared little bunny as she cried out to Nalan Mingxiu. Watch and learn, Nalan Mingxiu opened her mouth and said quietly. Suddenly, without warning, a sharp white light appeared above this fat man's head. Rumble. The small shop was immediately lit up by that white light, turning everyone's faces pale. Then, Fatty Lu began jumping around like he was having a stroke, waving his hands and feet in the air. His hairs all stood up straight, and his entire body was scorched black. The others could smell the scent of burned skin. Then, Fang Qi kicked him right out of the door. The customers were all dumbfounded. They thought Fang Qi was going to be in danger, so they were shocked to see what actually happened. Fang Qi then calmly looked at Xiao Yulv. What about you? How dare you injure my people like that? Xiao Yulv had never felt so humiliated his entire life. How dare this owner burn my henchman in front of so many people and kick him out like that? That was equivalent to slapping him on his face. Beat him up. He pointed at Fang Qi and shouted, beat him up until he dies. Less than 10 seconds later, the tall and skinny man was kicked out of the shop. Like Fatty Lu, his hair was also turned into an afro, and his body was scorched pitch black. Xiao Yulv was the only cultivator left in the shop. I dare you to try and hurt me. Rumble. Once again, a streak of lightning shone in the shop. Xiao Yulv's body was immediately burned. He opened his mouth and spat out a puff of smoke. Like the other two before him, he was thrown out as well. The entire internet cafe fell into a moment of silence as everyone looked at Fang Qi in shock and awe. The weird rumble and the lightning punishment left everyone dumbstruck. Moreover, did Fang Qi actually throw them out? Even normal cultivators were treated like VIP customers at most of Zhuhua's shops and restaurants, but Fang Qi threw them out? Wait, you just wait. How dare you plot against me? Xiao Yulv's voice came from outside the shop. I will come back tomorrow and smash your shop into pieces. Lan Yan covered her mouth with her hand and watched as Xiao Yulv and the others two cultivators ran away. She thought of what she almost did and felt the sweat soak through her dress. Everyone else who once threatened to smash Fang Qi's shop felt goosebumps appearing on their bodies as well. How could they have acted so brave and arrogant back then? Fang Qi clapped his hands as if he just did something not even worth mentioning. He sat back down on his armchair and looked at Lan Yan. You should really be thanking that smart girl who you came in with. How bold of you! Finally, 2 customers reached their time limits and left, and Nalan Mingxiu sat down calmly before that computer with an emotionless expression as if nothing happened. Unlike them, we are really curious as to what makes your shop different from the rest. Nalan Mingxiu isn't usually like this. Lin Xiao muttered under his breath. Hey? Why? Song Qingfeng replied quietly, she probably investigated as much as she could before coming. Unlike Xiao Yulv, she's not an idiot. So, would the two of you like to watch the movie or play the game first? Fang Qi asked. Then, he explained the difference between the movie and game to them. A novel. Lan Yan looked at Fang Qi, still a little scared. If Nalan Mingxiu didn't stop her, she would have ended up like those three cultivators. The good thing was that she had been stopped. Lan Yan looked at the weird spiritual artifacts before her. Are these all created by cultivators? Although she had seen quite a few spiritual artifacts made by cultivators, she wasn't sure if these were. She would have to use them first. You should watch the movie. I recommend it, it's absolutely amazing. Blackie smiled and said as he played the role of a nice bystander. I recommend the movie too. There's a lot of basic information in the movie that will help you in the game. Lin Sha rubbed his hands together, looking forward to seeing their expressions after watching the movie. I think newbies should start with the movie, playing the game first was really hard. Xi Xiaoyun said in all honesty. The movie is for watching, and the game is for playing. Nalan Mingxiu's profile looked like an ever-melting ice statue. Her eyes were filled with logic and reason and she said, 90% of the players here recommended the movie because it's shocking, I can learn something, and it's good for newbies. Plus, I wanted to start by watching. I guess I'll pick the movie. Nalan Mingxiu made her decision. Upon hearing Nalan Mingxiu's choice, Lan Yan naturally picked the same one. However, she wasn't convinced by this shop. If Nalan Mingxiu didn't insist on coming, she would never have even laid eyes here. A novel? What a joke! The owner of the shop might be strong, but creating games is a waste of his talent, she thought. Soon, they were taken into the world of Resident Evil. Virtual reality. Nalan Mingxiu heard students talk about it at the Lingyun Academy. Therefore, when she noticed that she was in a lifelike world, she immediately thought of these words. This is virtual reality. Lan Yan, who was sitting beside her, was completely dumbfounded. Is this an illusion? How could this be? How could it be so real? At the same time, information began going into her brain. At the beginning of the 21st century, the Umbrella Corporation. 21st century? What a weird era name. The Red Queen, are these artifact spirits? Do they work inside a giant spiritual artifact? The more Lan Yan watched, the more shocked she became. Some things were completely beyond her understanding and imagination. However, for some reason, she understood what every word meant. It was as if she could obtain new knowledge and skills while watching the movie. Is this really a warrior inheritance? Although she didn't want to admit it, this movie was really similar to a warrior inheritance. No wonder those warriors drew this comparison. The plot of the movie was extremely intense. Moreover, it was an independent story, so it was fine even if they hadn't played the game yet. Therefore, Lan Yan was quickly immersed into the movie. This game is such a unique novelty. It amazed her. She never thought something like this existed in this world. It was beyond her wildest imagination. She finally believed that the customers weren't duped into coming here. What the shop offered was more than enough to attract all these people. Is what we saw real? Nalan Mingxiu finished the movie at the same time. Although her expression was much calmer than Lan Yan's, a hint of barely visible amazement could still be detected if people observed her closely. Who knows? Maybe it happened in a faraway land, or perhaps it's just a story, Fang Qi answered casually. Really? Nalan Mingxiu could feel that her body was changing. For example, she felt like she could better control her body and even gained knowledge of combat techniques. Although her warrior qi didn't improve, if she were to engage in combat, she would be better than she was before. Fang Qi shook his head. It's called a movie. A movie. She carefully pondered the meaning behind this word. Is there anything else? Lan Yan couldn't help but ask, what is the game you were talking about before? I remember you accusing me of being manipulative. You said I tricked and bewitched my customers. You also said that I hired these people to act as customers in my shop. Fang Qi looked at her and said with a smile on his face. Song Qingfeng and the others also stared at her. Her ignorance was more obvious than ever. If there were a crack in the floor, she really wanted to crawl into it. Lan Yan felt extremely awkward and embarrassed. Did I say that this shop was tricking and bewitching its customers? Before, she was looking at these warriors and rich young men as if they were stupid. But now, she felt like the stupid one. I admit that I underestimated your shop. She looked at Fang Qi, feeling like she was going to burst into tears. She finally understood what Fang Qi meant by ignorance is bliss. Fang Qi laughed before standing up and teaching them how to play the game. 4 hours later. What? We can only play for 6 hours. Lan Yan immediately stood up from her seat and stared at Fang Qi with wide-open eyes. No, she screamed, I have to at least uncover the mystery behind the Book of Curses. The people around her couldn't help but laugh. The owner has never changed his rules for anyone. Oh yet? She questioned as she took out a bunch of crystals and stuffed them into Fang Qi's hand. She demanded, what do you think? I'll pay you 10 times the original price. 10 times. The highest offer to date was from Song Qingfeng, and it was only 5 times the original price. Did she just offer him 10 times the price? 20 crystals for an hour? A couple of customers looked at the crystals and swallowed their saliva. Talk about steep prices. Fang Qi looked down at the crystals in his hands and hesitated. If the system allowed him to do so, he really wanted to run away with all that money. Sadly, the system didn't even respond this time around. I'm sorry. Fang Qi gave her the crystals back unwillingly and said righteously, everyone has to follow the rules at my shop. Is he an idiot? Why wouldn't he take the crystals? A single player could play for several days with 20 crystals. He really doesn't want it. Then how much do you think we should give you? Nalan Mingxiu asked. Her tone was icy and sounded impatient, it felt like she wasn't in the mood to negotiate with Fang Qi. 1,000 times the original price? Or 10,000 times? Fang Qi's expression remained calm. It doesn't matter how much you give me, rules are rules, and I won't bend them for anyone. The owner sure is a rule-abiding person. The man with the mustache said as he smoothed out his facial hair. He was relieved after seeing how Fang Qi followed his own rules. It meant that no one could get their hands on these computers. Wu Shan and the others, who were originally unhappy about the time limit, felt much better upon hearing Fang Qi reject someone who offered him 10 times the original price. Song Qingfeng thought back at his own bitter experience and couldn't help but gloat in his mind. We tried the same thing a long time ago. Are you really not going to let us play? Lan Yan felt like spitting out blood. She noticed that she couldn't stop playing. However, she couldn't play anymore. If she didn't just witness how powerful the owner was, Lan Yan would want to kill him. She thought Fang Qi was a sly scammer. But now, she realized that he was an honest business person. How could someone not be moved by money? If he is a scammer, then everyone else would also be a scammer. I really want to keep playing. Lan Yan stomped hard on the floor. Can't you accommodate us? No. You're doing this on purpose. Lan Yan glared at Fang Qi murderously, but he just ignored her. After a while, Nalan Mingxiu finally said, let's go. Feeling embarrassed, Lan Yan didn't want to let up. But I really want to keep playing. Ah. Miss. Before she could react, Nalan Mingxiu had left the internet cafe. Lan Yan had no choice but to follow her. Lan Yan's expression was complicated as she walked out unwillingly. Ms. Nalan. I think this shop isn't what we thought it was. Why didn't that world look fake to me? It was so weird. The zombies, guns, and virus all seemed so real. Oh, and I feel like I learned a lot of combat skills. Oh, and I think my skills improved. I wonder what happens afterward. I'm so curious. The owner is awful, I can't believe that he won't let us keep playing. I really want to teach him a lesson. I really want to go back and play. Lan Yan blabbed on and on and on. In the end, Nalan Mingxiu turned around, her expression was different than it used to be. She said softly, let's come again tomorrow. Yunshan Tavern, to some extent, what happened to Xiao Yulv affected them as well. Right now, all they cared about was Xiao Yulv and the 3 mysterious lightning strikes in Fang Qi's shop. The owner's so brave. Blackie shuddered as he recalled what happened. I can't believe that he kicked Xiao Yulv out of his shop. I wonder if anything bad will happen because of this, Liang Shi sighed. Bad? Blackie laughed. You think the owner was looking for trouble? He didn't even take them seriously. Li Quan picked up his cup and toasted to Liang Shi with a bitter smile on his face. I'm glad you stopped me back then, or else. Then, he shook his head and drank all the wine in his cup. Wu Shan laughed loudly. That's not important, it has nothing to do with us. All we have to do is play the game. I'm impressed by the owner's adherence to his rules. Everyone is, Li Quan replied, smiling awkwardly. They had to admit that the movie version of Resident Evil 1 brought more shock to them than the game did. The large zombie horde, the dismembering scene by the lasers, and the messy city at the very end all left deep impressions in their minds. Those who had never seen storylines like this before were all shocked beyond words. On the other hand, everyone knew that watching the movie could help with the improvement of one's combat skills. Although the improvements weren't continuous and sustainable like the improvement from the game, it was still visible. Some even wondered, is this really virtual? The combat, weapons, and everything in the game seems real. Is it a record of a war somewhere that we don't know about? Lingyun Academy, after the movie version came out, the students had more to talk about in their daily conversations. Most of the players were from the Lingyun Academy, so they would talk about Resident Evil on their way to the school. Of course, there were also players who liked to play pranks on others. After his martial arts techniques class, Song Qingfeng headed home around sunset. There was a secluded tree-lined trail from the martial arts field to the gates of the academy. Because of its location, no one trimmed this area. Therefore, the branches and leaves of the tung trees intertwined and created a giant, green-arched passage. The thick leaves stopped the sunlight from seeping through, so the trail was dark. Suddenly, Song Qingfeng noticed 2 people standing under a tree in front of him. The 2 people were wearing ragged clothes and headed towards him slowly. There wasn't enough light, and their heads were down, so Song Qingfeng couldn't see their faces clearly. He instinctively felt like something was wrong. He asked curiously, "What are you doing?" Suddenly, the 2 of them looked up and showed their rotten faces. Then, they growled and charged at Song Qingfeng. Zombies! Song Qingfeng was immediately terrified. How could there be zombies in the real world? By the time he came back to his senses, the 2 zombies had jumped before him, one of them even grabbed his arm. The zombies immediately cried out in pain, "Ouch, young Master Song, can't you be gentler? I thought we were friends," another voice sounded. The zombies were actually Lin Xiao and Su Luo. "What the hell are you 2 up to?" Song Qingfeng glared at them. "I didn't use much warrior qi, get up." Lin Xiao laughed as he got up from the ground and took the mask-like item off his face. "What do you think? Our zombie masks look lifelike, don't they?" Su Luo laughed. "We made them in a rush. If you look closely, it's a little rough around the edges." Song Qingfeng was so mad that he burst out laughing. "You guys are hilarious, I can't believe that you would dress up as zombies. Don't tell others that I know you, okay? What do you think, young Master Song, would you like to join our zombie army?" Su Luo patted Song Qingfeng's shoulder and winked at him. Song Qingfeng glanced at them in disdain. It doesn't suit my status. Did you think that I would stoop to your level? What's the problem? No one can recognize you with a mask on. Lin Xiao grabbed his arm and pulled him aside. Suddenly, a few people appeared at the end of the road. Isn't that Qi and his friends? He quickly took out a zombie mask and handed it to Song Qingfeng. Hurry up and put it on. They should taste the horror of being jump-scared by zombies. Qi, Xi Xiaoun, Wang Guangyuan and a few other students were walking down the path while discussing the lightning punishment that happened at the Origins Internet Club today, as well as Resident Evil. Suddenly, they saw a lifeless figure standing there with his back facing them. Under the big tree was another person, hunched on the ground. Then, they noticed the third person lying down before them. Is he hurt? Curious, Qi walked up and patted the back of the man who was lying on the ground. That man slowly turned around, revealing his rotten face. Ah! A shriek erupted, zombie! Zombie! Qi pulled his hands back as if he had been electrocuted. If he were injured by zombies, even a little, he would be infected. There weren't any blood serums in this world that he could use as antidotes. Then, the dead body on the ground slowly got up. The man on the side of the road turned around as well. It was another rotten zombie. The three zombies growled before charging towards the people in front of them. Although they've killed quite a few zombies in the game, they've never seen anything like this in real life. Moreover, Xi Xiaoun's scream scared them all, causing Qi to grab his sister by the wrist and run off almost immediately. Wang Guangyuan and the others were blanking out when they noticed that Qi had run away. Therefore, they turned around and dashed away without hesitation. Ha ha ha! The three zombies all laughed until their stomachs hurt. Quiet down! More people are coming. After Qi ran away with his friends, a few others walked toward them. Get ready, get ready! Song Qingfeng felt like crying. He realized that he had been roped into their shenanigans and couldn't get out. That night, a rumor spread at the Lingyun Academy. Apparently, there were zombies on the path between the martial arts field and the gates of the academy. Fang Qi finally heard news about the neighboring shop. But sadly, it wasn't good news. Qi, are you in a hurry to use that shop? Auntie Wang knew that a lot of people visited Fang Qi's shop. Although she asked that question, she already knew the answer to it. I don't know why. No one wanted that shop for the longest time, but someone suddenly bought it. It's okay, Fang Qi replied, thank you, Auntie Wang. Don't thank me, Auntie Wang said apologetically, I didn't help much. Fang Qi felt confused upon returning to his shop. Something was definitely up. Who in the world bought that shop at a time like this? As he racked his brain for an answer, a man wearing a black robe came into his shop. You are? Fang Qi was just about to ask if this man was a new customer introduced by someone when he took out a letter from his inner pocket. Are you Mr. Fang Qi? The man in black handed him the letter. My master asked me to give this to you. Your master? Fang Qi was confused as he took the letter. Then, he suddenly thought of the correlation between this letter and the neighboring shop. Thank your master for me, will you? Fang Qi opened the letter and read it. I would like to treat Mr. Fang to tea tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. See you on the third floor of the Wind and Moon Pavilion. He stood outside his shop and looked into the sky, without a speck of emotion on his face. I guess some people just don't know when to give up. Fang Qi only got to play for 2 to 3 hours yesterday before closing. Today, he was busy the entire day and didn't get the chance to even touch a computer. He used to have 20 ISH customers. But now, he had more than 30. Fang Qi looked at the number of movie tickets sold, 32 tickets. These tickets couldn't be rebought. This meant that he needed 18 or more new customers at his internet cafe to sell 50 tickets. Only then would he complete his task. Yet, the only thing he cared about was the size of his shop. The internet cafe was extremely busy and full all the time, he really needed more space. The next morning at the Wind and Moon Pavilion, only those with enough status could go up to the third floor. Those who came here were either dignified cultivators, elegant aristocrats, or highly respected warriors with spiritual artifacts on their backs. Fang Qi had seen people like that before. Even if they limited their warrior qi, others could still feel the great extent of their powers. When Fang Qi headed upstairs, two young men in blue passed by him. The young men weren't as well built as warriors, but their eyes emitted an icy and powerful light. Their bodies gave off a unique sense of freedom and special auras. Without a doubt, they were both cultivators who were powerful. I heard Xiao Yulv was beaten up yesterday. I think so, at a shop called Origins. His grandfather used to hold such high power, but Xiao Yulv sure is useless. He couldn't even win against an ordinary civilian. I can't believe he still calls himself a cultivator. Exactly, he even contacted Su Fuwei. Su Fuwei, the Yuan River Realm cultivator? It's just a small shop, why is he making it into such a big deal? The two cultivators discussed amongst themselves as they walked upstairs. Fang Qi heard them and furrowed his eyebrows. Are you Mr. Fang Qi? As soon as he arrived upstairs, a pretty woman in red walked up and greeted him. This woman also seemed to have abundant qi. Clearly, anyone who was on the third level was not a commoner, including the waiters and waitresses. Fang Qi nodded his head slightly. Please come with me. Then, Fang Qi followed her to a private room, located at the northern end of the restaurant. Its location was obviously separated from the other rooms, clearly depicting the high status and prestige of whoever invited Fang Qi. The hallway of the private room was guarded by 4 people, and they looked at Fang Qi indifferently with a slight hint of arrogance. The truth was, no one understood why the person in the private room would invite such an ordinary-looking young man over for tea. The private room was spacious and could fit at least 8 tables. However, there was only one table beside the window, from where one could see the countless carriages on the roads of Zhuhua City. The utensils on the table, as well as the cups, plates, and bowls, were all meticulously made of silver and extremely valuable. Steam rose from the table as all sorts of delicate dishes were placed on it. The person who invited Fang Qi seemed sure that he would arrive on time. A girl wearing white sat on the east side of the table. Her hair was neatly organized into a bun, and she was an elegant beauty. Fang Qi could only see her profile, she was beautiful and charming. She sat beside the window and looked out into the sky as if she were an alluring sculpture made of ice. Her gaze landed on the crowd of people outside. It felt like only by looking at them would her icy expression show a hint of warmth. Behind her stood a girl in black. She was beautiful and refined but also emitted a valiant aura. Your name is Lan Yan, right? Fang Qi sat down and asked the girl in black, confirming the identity of the girl in white. Ms. Nalan, I didn't think you would be interested in a tiny shop on a secluded street. That depends on the shop. Nalan Mingxue finally turned her head and looked at the wine cups before her. Lan Yan slowly filled them up. This is pear blossom wine, a Zhuhua specialty. It's extremely smooth, and it can help you sleep better and calm your nerves. It's also good for your cultivation, Nalan Mingxue said as Lan Yan handed a cup to Fang Qi. After seeing your shop yesterday, I've noticed that it really is a magical little place. Fang Qi looked at the amber-colored liquid in his cup and laughed. Ms. Nalan, I'm going to assume that you didn't invite me here to just drink, right? Lan Yan took out a stack of paper and placed them before Fang Qi. These are the deeds to all the shops on Street 103 East. What do you mean? Fang Qi froze upon realizing what they did. Don't tell me that you bought the entire street. It's just a little gift, Nalan Mingxue said gently. It's for you, Mr. Fang. What do you want, Ms. Nalan? Fang Qi laughed. TL note, Kina is the set of joint lock techniques used in the Chinese martial arts to control or lock an opponent's joints or muscles/tendons, so he cannot move. The difference between normal people and cultivators are like the heaven and the earth. That's how big the difference is." She paused for a second before continuing. "The cultivators behind you must be extremely confident to be able to show these items to the world. But they asked you, Mr. Fang, to be the owner of the shop that offers the items they created because their identities cannot be revealed to the rest of the world, right? Or do they not want people to know that they exist?" Nalan Mingxiu asked. "Either way, these people are way out of your league, but they trust you enough to give you all their items. That means they want something from you. As long as they do, we can negotiate. You only need one night to perfectly investigate and analyze my situation." Fang Qi laughed. "Ms. Nalan, should I praise you?" "It's nothing." Nalan Mingxiu sipped the pear blossom wine to warm up her throat. Her snowy skin reddened a little as if a flower had bloomed in the depths of winter, making her look more beautiful than ever. Her tone was still icy and a little lazy. "The truth is, I went to your shop after doing my research." She began looking into the Origins Internet Club as soon as she heard about it. That was why she went yesterday and not the day before. "So, Mr. Fang, may I ask if the cultivators behind you want to work for the Nalan family?" Upon seeing Fang Qi's displeased expression, she added, "Don't reject my offer just yet. You should know that what happened with Xiao Yulv isn't the end of it. The cultivators behind you can't show themselves and help you. I'm not looking down on you, but with your power, you won't be able to deal with him by yourself. With the Nalan family's support, however, I can promise you that no one will have the courage to cause trouble for you." What she wanted was clear. She wanted Fang Qi little shop for herself. Never once did she give up on that idea. Fang Qi was displeased. "You went through this much trouble of getting me out of my shop just for this? Your analysis is right," he said with a smile, "but allow me to be blunt. The Nalan family is not qualified enough. Do you know what the name Nalan means in Zhuhua City and the Jiangnan region?" Lan Yan was furious. "Even the members of the royal family have to treat the Nalan family with respect. Ms. Nalan is interested in your shop, you should be honored that she wants to give you an opportunity. Don't think too highly of yourself. You're good at exploiting small openings." Fang Qi laughed, "But you're imagining things if you think Xiao Yulv can threaten me. You're insane." Lan Yan placed her hand on the hilt of the sword by her waist. An icy light shone before Fang Qi's chest as the sword was drawn. Fang Qi, on the other hand, raised his cup and immediately smelled the sweet aroma of pear blossom wine. He didn't drink it yet, but he felt like he was floating in the air. Fang Qi nodded and drank the entire cup. He felt a warm current spread to his limbs. In addition, he felt a warm but weak energy reaching his danshan. "Is this warrior qi? It's a good wine." 1 cup of this wine was equivalent to 10 days of training. "Rich people sure are different," Fang Qi muttered to himself. Then, he began eating as if no one else was present. He poured himself another cup of wine and never stopped chewing. Lan Yan, who looked at Fang Qi and pointed at him with her sword, was shocked more and more. Forget about the food, the wine was a spiritual wine that Nalan Mingxiu used to test Fang Qi out. This wine was made from 1,000-year-old peach blossoms and made to complement the technique Nalan Mingxiu was cultivating. Although it wasn't poisonous, even Nalan Mingxiu could only drink a small cup every day. After that, she would have to take an elixir called the Kongling pill to consume and digest the energy in the wine. But now, Fang Qi already finished half a bottle. "You're kidding me, right?" Fang Qi was still drinking it. Even Nalan Mingxiu looked at him in shock as well. Is this young man a monster? She did her research. Fang Qi was just a normal warrior who hadn't had any unique encounters. How is he so powerful? She didn't know that after Fang Qi's body was strengthened by the T-virus, it was different than that of normal people. Even if he didn't use his warrior qi, the spiritual wine still wasn't capable of getting him drunk. After he finished everything on the table, he rubbed his stomach and looked at Lan Yan, who was still pointing her sword at him. Lan Yan's body froze, she felt like Fang Qi wasn't an ordinary warrior. Instead, he seemed like a wild beast. Fang Qi stood up and walked up to Nalan Mingxiu, but she felt like she didn't have the courage to attack him. Nalan Mingxiu tensed up, she felt like she was no match for Fang Qi. How is that possible? He's only 16 years old, and he didn't even have that much warrior qi. Fang Qi walked closer and closer to her. She had never been so close to anyone else, they were so close that she could feel the temperature of Fang Qi's body. She felt like a wild beast had approached her, sniffing its prey, making goosebumps appear all over her body. She had never been nervous her entire life, but she was now. She thought that she was well aware of who Fang Qi was, she thought she knew everything about him, even his embarrassing childhood stories. But now, everything had sunken into a black hole of mystery, leaving her with nothing but the unknown. The unknown was the most horrifying. The good thing was that that feeling disappeared quickly. Soon, Fang Qi turned around and left. Before he did that, he said quietly, "Ms. Nalan, the food and wine were delicious, so I'll forgive you for testing me. Next time, the consequences might be too severe for you to handle." Then, he stood up from his seat and took a deed, subsequently placing some crystals on the table. "You should return the rest, I don't want to chase the neighbors away just so I can open a big internet cafe." He waved the deed in his hand and said, "Remember to give me the keys." The cultivator behind him must have given him a powerful protective spiritual artifact. Nalan Mingxiu's expression froze. She was more logical than normal people, therefore, she quickly calmed down because she didn't believe Fang Qi was that powerful. There was no way that a 16-year-old young man could become so powerful so fast. "I think I underestimated how much that person values him." "Wait," right before Fang Qi left, Nalan Mingxiu called out. Fang Qi paused by the door. He turned around to look at Nalan Mingxiu, who quickly hid the shock in her eyes. He sneered, "What? You want me to stay?" Nalan Mingxiu slowly calmed down. "If I go with you right now, there will be seats, right? Mr. Fang." Nalan Mingxiu finished the pear blossom wine in her cup and said, "Even if we can't strike a deal, I can continue visiting your shop, right?" "Of course." "Stop calling me Mr. Fang though," Fang Qi added, "it sounds weird." "Okay, sir. I heard my friend at Lingyun Academy say that the Huang House has morning class today." Fang Qi suddenly remembered what Wang Tai told him yesterday. "You're not going today?" Nalan Mingxiu smiled. "I'm going to skip class." Fang Qi met someone who was crazier, yet also acted calmer than Song Qing Feng. When Liang Shi, Blackie, Wu Shan and the others saw Fang Qi walk up with Nalan Mingxiu and Lan Yan, their brains went into immediate overdrive. "What's going on? It can't be. Sir, you've disappointed us. Sir, you." They glanced at each other before pointing at Fang Qi and Nalan Mingxiu. The fact that Fang Qi and Nalan Mingxiu came together in the morning left too much up for imagination. "Screw you, are you guys crazy? I just went out for breakfast, why are you making it into such a big deal?" Fang Qi glanced at them, "You're too old to wait outside every morning, waiting to play on the computer. Are you guys elementary school students? You went out for breakfast." Blackie laughed in relief. "Sir, what's an elementary school student?" Liang Shi rubbed his head in confusion. "They are a giant and horrifying group." The others still looked confused. "Are they scarier than zombies?" Lan Yan asked innocently. "To some extent, they're much scarier than zombies," Fang Qi said profoundly. "I didn't know something like that existed." Just as she was wondering how scary the elementary school kids were, she suddenly realized something. "Wait, there are no more seats." Of course, all the seats were taken. Liang Shi had a lot of warrior friends who slowly began joining him, creating a player group that could not be underestimated. More than 10 people came in the morning. Fang Qi unlocked the neighboring shop with keys Lan Yan gave him. This place used to be a blacksmith shop and was much bigger than Fang Qi thought. It had been empty for a long time, so there was dust everywhere. After Fang Qi threw away the trash and began tidying the place up. Nalan Mingxia was truly a genius of the Ling Yun Academy, even her gaming skills were better than most other students. She had a dagger in her hand as she walked through the hallways. It was obvious that after yesterday, she had gotten used to the game. She searched every corner of the mansion in an orderly fashion, so she didn't miss any details or items. As the daughter of the Nalan family, she was used to her relatives fighting and manipulating each other. However, this was the first time she experienced such a dangerous situation by herself. This trap-filled mansion gave her hands-on experience of what hopelessness and death felt like. The traps in the mansion were something that one could not be experienced in real life. The death of her character yesterday was caused by the fact that she didn't understand the game. But for a smart girl like her, dying once was the max. This was her first time experiencing the charm of the game. She was constantly protected by guards from her family, so she was never faced with real danger. Therefore, she never got to make decisions in battle. That wasn't what she wanted. Being able to play another character and seek adventure in another world without anyone protecting her gave her an exhilaration that she had never felt before. Especially since she felt like death was lingering in every corner. She felt like she had opened a door to another world. The dagger danced at the tip of her fingers like a silver butterfly. The others could tell that her mood was different than usual. She's really good. It's been so long, but she hasn't died yet, right? This mystery seems really easy for her. I heard that she started playing yesterday, but she's almost halfway through. She's catching up to Song Qing Feng. Wow, that's really fast. Quickly, a group of players waiting for computers stood behind her, watching her play. Hey, not bad. Fang Qi came back to his shop and glanced over at Nalan Mingxiu. You passed the plant lab already? Of course. Lan Yan said proudly, something like this isn't a challenge for Ms. Nalan. Suddenly, a group of cultivators wearing white shirts and yellow robes appeared outside Fang Qi's shop. Xiao Yulv walked in the very front along with another slightly chubby middle-aged man who was wearing a gold robe. This middle-aged man's eyes narrowed into a line, but it couldn't hide his icy gaze. He placed his hands behind his back and took each step slowly. Yet, the cultivators behind him had to jog to not fall behind. Soon, they arrived outside the door. The middle-aged man glanced up at the sign and asked, Yulv, is this the shop that used the lightning technique to kick the three of you out yesterday? It is. Xiao Yulv looked happy. This middle-aged man's name was Su Fuwei. Although they belonged to the same generation, Su Fuwei cultivated earlier and had already reached level 1 of the Yuan River Realm. Moreover, he was the head minister in Liuyun Daoist Palace that was a part of the Wu-Vai Daoist Alliance. He possessed many powerful spiritual artifacts. Even the mayor had to be respectful towards him, let alone a small shop. He took out a light blue pearl from his brown pocket and said, the cultivator hidden in this shop is skilled in the lightning technique, but I have a lightning repellent bead. I can't believe that a commoner has the courage to bully you just because a cultivator has his back. Once I capture him, you can do whatever you want to him. Okay. Xiao Yulv spat, I'm going to make him pay for what he did. Then, Xiao Yulv turned around and said to the dozen or so cultivators from Liuyun Daoist Palace, Junior brothers, guard the door, don't let him run away. Fang Qi quickly noticed the noise outside his shop. He watched as a short and chubby cultivator walked in with Xiao Yulv as well as a couple other cultivators wearing white shirts and yellow robes. The chubby cultivator glanced around the room and demanded, who's the owner? Fang Qi raised his eyebrows and looked at Xiao Yulv who was standing behind the chubby cultivator. You're here to cause trouble again. Again. The customers at the internet cafe all looked toward the door. They were shocked to see so many cultivators inside and outside the shop. There are so many cultivators. It was rare for common warriors to see a cultivator, let alone so many. Will the owner get in trouble? Liang Shi asked, a little worried. He got Su Fuwei from the Liu Yundaist palace to come. Song King Feng's expression was grim. It's troublesome all right. Su Fuwei? Is he a famous cultivator? Li Quan asked, confused. He's the head minister of Liu Yundaist palace and a Yuan River Realm cultivator. What do you think? Yuan River Realm. Upon hearing these words, everyone in the shop gasped. Cultivators in the Yuan River Realm were equivalent to master warriors on paper. However, their actual powers could be compared to ancestral warriors, if not more powerful. Because of that, the status of warriors who weren't in the ancestral warrior realm yet were significantly lower than that of the cultivators. It's best if they could teach him a lesson, then Ms. Nalan will be able to step up. Lan Yan fantasized evilly. Xiao Yulv laughed aloud. Today, senior brother Su brought his lightning repellent bead to counter your lightning technique. Let's see how arrogant you are today. Then, he said to the 6 cultivators behind him, beat him up. Troublemakers detected. Lightning punishment activated. The cultivators beside Xiao Yulv barely emitted their spiritual lights before a white light flashed before their eyes. Rumble. In a split second, the cultivators were thrown out, and their bodies were completely burned black. Junior brother Xiao, come here. I have the lightning repellent. Rumble. Before Su Fuwei could finish his sentence, they waved their hands and feet in the air as they jumped out of Fang Qi's shop. Liang Shi. That's the power of an ancestral warrior. Song Qing Feng. What did I just say? Lan Yan. Freaking r**tards, Fang Qi cursed as he pointed at the cultivators outside his door. Get the hell away from my face. The cultivators outside immediately ran away. Everything's good. Fang Qi waved his hands. It's just a small situation. Ms. Nalan. Lan Yan's lips twitched as she said quietly, Su Fuwei was kicked out. Yeah, I saw what happened. He sucked on it and stared outside the window. Sitting across from him was a young man wearing a light blue robe. He had an unconstrained aura and was obviously more than just a commoner. What are you looking at, Mr. Mew? This cultivator treated this man with a mustache, who didn't look like a cultivator, with great respect. It is quite sad. The young man smiled slightly. I can't have the most precious thing in Zhuhua City. The most precious thing. The cultivator in blue was extremely surprised. Have you ever heard of Resident Evil? The young man smiled. What is that? The cultivator asked, more surprised than ever. The young man with the mustache smiled. Haran, before you became a cultivator, I reminded you to not be blinded by your status. Thank you for the reminder, sir. The young man in blue began to sweat. He may be a cultivator now, but he still didn't have the courage to be impetuous. In the eastern end of Zhuhua City is a small shop called Origins. It's an interesting place, the man with the mustache smiled and said, once I leave, you can go take a look. Mr. Mew, you're leaving, the cultivator in blue asked. The man with the mustache took a big whiff of his pipe. Yes, I need to head back to Jingxi. The cultivator in blue nodded. Sir, is this shop the same shop that kicked Xiao Yulv out? The shop that kicked Xiao Yulv out. The man with the mustache smiled in amusement. Word got out already. Indeed, all the cultivators in Zhuhua City had heard about what happened yesterday. Apparently, Xiao Yulv led a bunch of people to cause trouble at that shop. Countless eyes, including the cultivators of Liu Yundaist Palace, watched as events unfolded. I can't believe Xiao Yulv went with Su Fuwei and got thrown out in less than 3 minutes. They're so useless. A fat man wearing a baggy blue robe discussed what happened with the others in the Wind and Moon Pavilion. That Su Fuwei brought his lightning repellent bead, but I heard it didn't even work. How can an entertainment shop owned by a commoner be so powerful? A young man in black asked. Entertainment? The fat man in blue asked curiously. I thought they sold novels? Apparently, the novel is even better than Celestial Warrior. I think it's called Resident Evil. Bored, he waved his hand in the air. Men like us don't read stuff like that. Xiao Yulv is probably the only person who's curious enough to check things out. We don't know, the young man in black said, but I need to see what kind of person is hiding in that little shop. Should we go check it out as well? Why should we? I heard a bunch of people are waiting outside. Xiao Yulv was kicked out yesterday for causing trouble. Are we going to go cause trouble as well? The fat guy said helplessly and angrily. Let's go early morning tomorrow. I'm curious, what can be so attractive? The young man in black patted the table. People such as Song Qingfeng, Su Zixin, and Wang Tai saw how Fang Qi passed the level, especially the second half of the game. They memorized how to solve some of the traps and mysteries. Therefore, they played the second half of the game faster than the others did. Song Qingfeng knew that he should focus on playing the game because he was about to pass it. Passing the game was such an exhilarating moment. Moreover, if he could pass today, he would be the first player at Origins Internet Club to pass Resident Evil, aside from Fang Qi. He would surpass everyone, even Nalan Mingxiu, Xi Qi, and Su Zixin. He became incredibly excited at the thought of this. Indeed, Song Qingfeng was good at the game. Whether it was killing hunters with a dagger or fighting against the boss, his movements had become much swifter. This proved just how much his combat skills had improved. As a warrior, he noticed how efficient his new combat skills were. If he could combine them with his martial arts skills in real life, his combat ability would improve drastically. Nalan Mingxiu only just started. A light flashed in Song Qingfeng's eyes as he thought, this time, I might be able to surpass her. Song Qingfeng and Su Zixin encountered the hunters at the same time, but the latter was less experienced. Therefore, Su Zixin fell behind and was now trying her best to catch up. Song Qingfeng, filled with high spirits, kept advancing until he finally reached the room where the final boss resided. Is Song Qingfeng going to pass the game? Everyone in the internet cafe turned their attention to him. It had been so long, and they had experienced so much. There was finally a player at the internet cafe who was about to pass the game. Upon seeing the big and tall tyrant slowly advancing toward him, Song Qingfeng felt incredibly emotional. Is that the tyrant? Aside from Su Zixin, who was going to pass the game soon as well, people like Liang Shi, Xi Qi, and even Nalan Mingxiu watched Song Qingfeng as he began his final battle. Song Qingfeng was imitating what Fang Qi did. First, he used his shotgun to lower the tyrant's HP in the first stage. Then, in the second stage, he dodged the tyrant's attacks while looking for opportunities to shoot it with his magnum revolver. Thanks to the movie version of Resident Evil 1, everyone's combat skills had improved significantly. Moreover, since Song Qingfeng had been practicing every day, his combat skills were now amazing. He was quick and agile, devoid of any unnecessary movements. His attacks looked more skilled than that of Fang Qi. He's so good. Upon seeing Song Qingfeng's swift attacks, forcing the tyrant's health bar to slowly go down, the people around him began breathing nervously and rapidly. His shooting skills and combat techniques are much better than the owner's, right? A warrior laughed loudly. What? The owner plays as well? I've never seen him play. Confused, Nalan Mingxiu asked. After all, people rarely saw Fang Qi play. The owner is the best at playing this game, he passed it a few days ago. Other players began discussing amongst themselves. The owner is also the first one to kill hunters with a dagger. If we didn't see him do it, we wouldn't think it was possible. The owner is the first one to think of ways to kill the final boss. He plays as well. Nalan Mingxiu glanced over at Fang Qi, who was lying comfortably in his armchair. She frowned slightly. Ever since she came, she had never seen him play this game. To her surprise, he was a legend to the players here. First person to kill hunters with a dagger, first person to pass the game, record setter, these words proved that Fang Qi really did finish the game before anyone else did. Nalan Mingxia was confused. How did he pass the game so fast? He's about to pass the game. The others saw that Song Qingfeng had seriously injured the tyrant and the helicopter had arrived. As soon as the rocket launcher was thrown down, everything would be over. A lot of people had witnessed the power of the rocket launcher, and those who didn't see it had been informed by older players. Everyone knew that there was this weapon that was capable of exploding the tyrant into pieces. When the rocket launcher was thrown out of the helicopter, everyone looked at Song Qingfeng's screen with anticipation. In the game, Song Qingfeng's character had pulled the trigger. Swoop! As flames flared on the screen, the main character, Chris, left in the helicopter. Song Qingfeng felt like screaming in joy. I finally passed the game. Song Qingfeng stood up from his seat. He waved his fists in the air while staring at the screen. The story had finally ended, but he will forever remember and reminisce this thrilling and unforgettable experience. He thought back at what he had been through over the past few days, the excitement of getting new weapons, the exhilaration of defeating strong enemies, the happiness of discussing the plot with friends, the gratefulness he felt when he was saved by his teammates, and the hardships he experienced when faced with these mysterious events. He felt like a small caterpillar that lived in a weird world. He had smelled the scent of flowers, seen rainbows, and been through thick and thin. Finally, he spun into a cocoon and one day became a butterfly that went on to live a fulfilled and glorious life. When he finally finished the game, he was so moved that he felt like crying. You have reached your time limit for today, please come again tomorrow. He looked around and glanced at his audience, who had surrounded him. This scene was forever remembered by them, they were all witnesses to what just happened. In the future, when Origins Internet Club had more than just Resident Evil 1 and this game got popular around the world, Song Qingfeng thought back to when he first played. When talking about the owner and himself passing the game, he said, "That's the scene most worthy of reminiscing." Cheers and applauses suddenly sounded in the internet cafe. This scene became a marvelous spectacle in Zhuhua City. Because of this, more people began visiting Fang Qi's shop. Fang Qi, however, was calm enough to casually lay in his armchair while yelling, "Line up, line up. Those who don't line up will be treated as troublemakers. People after that person should go home. You won't be able to play today." The blacksmith's shop next door was different from Fang Qi little shop. There were many equipment, appliances, and even random items such as ores and metals in the storage. All in all, the size of the shop was a couple times bigger than Fang Qi's shop. That was also why Fang Qi wanted this shop in the first place. After he closed his internet cafe, Fang Qi spent another hour cleaning up the blacksmith shop before heading upstairs for bed. It was late into the night, but the lights were still lit in a room somewhere in Zhuhua City. Nalan Mingxiu looked at the stacks of documents in front of her, her expression was so cold that the room was about to freeze. Why isn't there anything on him? There's no clue at all. Her expression darkened. I've never seen those weird lightning strikes from any cultivation sects. What is the identity of that cultivator or those cultivators behind him? The mystery before her became harder and harder to solve. The next day, I heard that zombie monsters originated from this place. Apparently, they're really scary. Before Fang Qi's shop even opened, a group of a dozen people huddled in front of it. They were all wearing Ling Yun Academy uniforms. These people were students of the Ling Yun Academy, and they had recently heard about the zombies at school. After investigation, they found out that zombies came from something called a movie, which one could see at this little shop. Therefore, they decided to come and check it out. Guo Xiang was a student from the Heaven House, home to the most powerful students of the Ling Yun Academy. Some of them were even stronger than the teachers. It's scary? Go ahead and try me. He was obviously unconvinced. He had just come back from a trip and heard about this place right away. After a few invitations, he decided to tag along. Fang Qi woke up extremely early this morning. After the upgrade, he was curious as to what his internet cafe looked like. He quickly got ready and went downstairs. When he got to the first floor, he immediately saw the difference. Rows and rows of heavy computer desks made of stone extended to the end of the room. Beside the door was a giant reception desk, and behind that desk was his small blackboard. Everyone would be able to see the information on the blackboard as soon as they walked in. The reception desk was on the very left of the internet cafe. On the left wall were cabinets and something that Fang Qi was familiar with. Is that a fridge? The arrangements and decorations weren't flashy, the combination of wood and stone gave this place a natural and down-to-earth feeling. The wall facing the street was made of glass. If Fang Qi opened the curtains, the people outside would be able to see everything going on inside. The shop was enclosed, there was a vent on the ceiling, which ensured the flow of fresh air. Most of the time, the curtains were down. Internet cafes couldn't be too bright, or else the screen would reflect light. The source of light mainly came from the round, gem-like lights on the ceilings. The lights were soft and gentle to the eyes. The entire internet cafe looked antique, but the design and structure were modern. Overall, this shop's features were different from all the other shops in this world. Fang Qi glanced outside his door and then back at his internet cafe. The inside of his shop seemed like a different world from the outside. Colored glass wasn't cheap, but it wasn't something rare either. Even the windows of Wang Tai's family's restaurant were created with the same material. However, it was a first for a shop in this world to make an entire wall with colored glass. Fang Qi counted, there were 52 computers in total. It was obvious that this was the most his system could give him. The rest of the space had seats, giving potential waiting customers places to rest. The students from the Ling Yun Academy carefully knocked on the glass wall. Isn't the owner afraid that someone will accidentally break the glass? Suddenly, the doors opened, it was 7:30 a.m. Whenever his internet cafe got new things, Fang Qi would instinctively wake up earlier. Today was no different, he now had 52 computers. Since there were many people who were turned away due to the limited seats, he assumed that there would be plenty of customers today. If he had as many customers today as he did yesterday, perhaps he would be able to finish his task. He was surprised upon seeing the group of people in front of his shop. You sure are early. You're the owner of this shop. Guo Xiang came in and looked around. He noticed that it was dark inside the shop, so his hand cautiously grasped the handle of the long sword on his back. Are there really monsters in here? Sir, a long-faced young man asked, do you have Resident Evil? I do. Fang Qi pointed at the little blackboard. It's 3 crystals for the movie, 5 crystals for the game. Also, it costs 2 crystals an hour to use the computers. That's so expensive. The long-faced young man was speechless. Is it? Fang Qi replied with a question of his own. Forget it. This young man placed 5 crystals on the table and said, let me try the cheapest one first. Soon, with the help of Fang Qi, he began watching the movie version of Resident Evil 1. This is really weird. Guo Xiang looked left and right. Is there something inside this item? Why do you need to wear this? Is it worth a lot? The others surrounded this young man and asked, how is it? Did you see that zombie thingy? What? The monsters are in these small eye masks. Guo Xiang pulled his sword out in surprise. Let me chop them apart. Stop, senior brother Guo. They all heard that Xiao Yulv was thrown out yesterday, so they quickly stopped him. Senior brother Guo, don't do that. Guo Xiang was immediately confused. Didn't you ask me to come and help you? Why are you stopping me? The other students looked embarrassed. It's our fault for not explaining things clearly. This is something new, it's a novel you can watch. Apparently, it's really magical. The zombies are the monsters inside the novel, we didn't ask you to come fight for us. The long-faced young man chimed in. He's right, I suggested that we come watch the apparently horrifying novel. How old are you? 3? Why would I watch something like that? Guo Xiang spat in disdain. Will the monsters jump out of the book and bite you? Apparently they can, another young man said mysteriously. Brother Yu, how's it going? It's amazing. Yu Kuai, who was watching the Resident Evil 1 movie version, exclaimed, I feel like I'm in another world. I can't touch anything, but I can see exactly what they're doing. It really is a watchable novel. It's called a movie. Fang Qi rolled his eyes. Right, movie. Is it that amazing? Guo Xiang became even more confused. No matter how he observed it, it was just an eye mask. No matter how weird it looked, it was still an eye mask. Moreover, he had no idea what the screen in front of him did. Come on, let's try it. The others couldn't wait any longer. Yu Kuai said, Senior brother Guo, just try. It is on me today. Then, he added, this is amazing. I heard that the line was so long yesterday, and some people didn't even get to watch it. I can't ask you to pay. Guo Xiang laughed. If it's really that magical, then I'll go crazy with you brats for once and pay 5 crystals to try it out. After paying, the group began watching the movie. Soon, they were at the opening scene. Task: sell 50 tickets for Resident Evil 1 movie version, completed. Task reward: Diablo 2 Virtual Reality Remake, Act I, and Act 2. At the same time, he received a new task. New Task 1, total Diablo 2 playtime reaches 1000 hours. Task reward: The Legend of Sword and Fairy 1. System reward: the internet cafe meets the system's requirements. 200 bottles of Sprite will be provided as a special bonus. Note: each bottle costs 3 crystals, and each person can buy 1 bottle a day. It cannot be taken outside the shop nor is it transferable between customers. Sprite? Fang Qi looked around in confusion. Where's the Sprite? Suddenly, he saw the fridge in the corner. There is Sprite in the fridge. He quickly opened the fridge, and as expected, he saw many bottles of Sprite. The problem was, this world was filled with all sorts of spiritual items. The spiritual wine Fang Qi drank last time could even improve his warrior qi, so what could Sprite do? Curious, Fang Qi asked, System, will my strength grow after drinking this? No, the system replied. Fang Qi became even more confused, will it improve my skills? That's not Sprite you are talking about. Fang Qi was speechless. Then what can it do? It can't be regular Sprite, right? It cost 3 crystals a bottle. You should try, host. Try. Fang Qi had no choice but to pick up a bottle of Sprite. As soon as he did, the system said, please pay. Fang Qi was dumbfounded. Even I have to pay. To stop you, the host, from keeping the Sprite, you have to pay as well. F***ck. Fang Qi said in disdain, before I came to this world, I drank all sorts of Sprite. What is this, well-aged Sprite from 1982? It's just Sprite, why would I pocket it? Unconvinced, Fang Qi opened a bottle and took a sip. Then, his eyes opened wide in surprise. As soon as the Sprite entered his mouth, he felt the lemonous sweetness stimulate his taste buds. At the same time, he felt countless bubbles dancing on the tip of his tongue, giving him ultimate pleasure. After he swallowed, he felt a nice and cool feeling shoot right to his organs. They were in the middle of summer, so even the mornings were hot and dry. However, this sip of Sprite instantly made him feel cooler than ever. This is awesome, the Sprite tastes so good. It was Sprite, but Fang Qi never had anything as good as this. The system made this Sprite. What's so special with it? Isn't it the same? Fang Qi pouted. Of course, it is not, the system said. The Sprite is made of mineral water from under the snowy mountains, which had been tempered by thousand-year-old volcanic rock. It circulated for hundreds of years and was eventually melted and filtered. It's cold spring water from volcanic rocks. Fang Qi was dumbfounded, but he replied, so, the water is better. The honey is produced by bees that collect pollen from a kind of spiritual flower called the ice heart flower. It can help with concentration and staying calm. Fang Qi's face was filled with shock. What about lemons? What could you have done with the lemons? The lemons are picked from the best lemon strains that had been through hundreds of years of cultivation. Through strict temperature and light control, the system created the best lemons. What about the carbonation? By using an advanced future machine called high-efficiency silent compressor and radiator. Forget it. Fang Qi was at a loss for words. You make the Sprite sound so awesome, but how can you charge so much for Diablo 2? 8 crystals just to play the first act. The system replied calmly, Diablo 2, Virtual Reality Remake uses one of the most classic games in your previous life, Diablo 2, as a template. It combines virtual reality technology that is a century more advanced than the one in your previous life with the magic and combat skills of the Western fantasy world. At the same time, the system restored the rune technology and the unique items. Dumbstruck, Fang Qi stuck out his thumb and replied, You rule. Suddenly, a fatty in blue walked into the shop. His name was Ouyang Cheng, one of the most powerful men of the younger generation in Zhuhua City. Most of the people in his family were high-level officials, his older sister was even a high-ranking imperial concubine. Moreover, the Ouyang family's influence was deeply rooted in Jiangnan and was at its peak. Today, this high-status fatty came to an area in the eastern part of Zhuhua City where the ordinary people lived. In the past, something like this would be unimaginable. But now, he walked into the shop with an unhappy expression on his face. An Cheng and Bulet and Che said that we are meeting here this morning. I can't believe that they would stand me up. At this time, Fang Qi was sitting in front of a computer by the door, ready to play Diablo 2. Sir! Ouyang Cheng shouted, I heard that you sell novels here? Let me see what you have. Novels? Fang Qi rolled his eyes. I don't sell novels. Then what are you selling? Ouyang Cheng waved his arm. I don't care what you're selling, give me whatever is best. Fang Qi pointed at the blackboard. Take a look for yourself. Ouyang Cheng's gaze landed where Fang Qi was pointing. Game, Diablo 2, Virtual Reality Remake, Act I, 8 crystals, Resident Evil 1, Virtual Reality Remake, 5 crystals. Resident Evil 1, Movie Version, 3 crystals. Drinks, Sprite, 3 crystals. Computer usage cost, 2 crystals/hour. It sure is expensive. Ouyang Cheng said, but I like expensive stuff. As long as I'm happy, it doesn't matter how expensive it is. Which one would you like to try first? Fang Qi asked. The most expensive one. Ouyang Cheng immediately chose Diablo 2. He pointed at the blackboard. The name Diablo sounds like a novel, but you said it isn't. Let me see it first. The novels in this shop are pretty famous. Just then, a young man wearing a small silver hairpiece and another man wearing black walked into the shop. Apparently, you can see lifelike scenes. I wonder if the rumors are real. An Cheng said, I heard there is a powerful cultivator behind this shop. If that's the case, then it's probably true. You guys are finally here. Ouyang Cheng immediately greeted the two of them, let's play that something game. Diablo. Fang Qi rolled his eyes again. After Fang Qi explanations, the three of them quickly understood how to control the game. they could either control it through the virtual reality headset or with the keyboard and mouse while watching through the screen. It sure is something new. They quickly began playing. First, they saw the Origins Internet Club logo. This game was a remake of Diablo 2, developed by Blizzard North. Therefore, through careful observation, one could see the Blizzard North logo on the lower right corner of the screen. After the logo appeared, the game began. The first thing to pop out were two options, single-player mode and multiplayer mode. They looked at the screen curiously and asked, "Sir, which one are we supposed to choose?" Fang Qi replied, "If you want to play on your own, then choose the single-player mode. If you want to go on the adventure together, then choose the multiplayer mode." Interesting. This shop is sure unique. Satisfied, An Cheng laughed. He said to Bulet and Che, "What do you think? Should we play together? Ask Fatty if he wants to play with us." Bulet and Che clicked multiplayer mode, and Fang Qi taught him how to open a room. "Let's play together." Soon, Bulet and Che got to choose his character. Faced with the lifelike characters before him, Bulet and Che felt like he had discovered a new continent. It's true. This shop is magical. He scrolled the mouse across the players, reading the character descriptions that popped out. Each description was written in great detail: the Amazon, female players only, female warriors who roamed the plains near the South Sea. The assassin, martial arts based, her body and determination are deadly weapons. The paladin, a crusader from the Church of Zakaram, fighting for the glory of the light. He is always prepared for battle and will fight for the faith he believes in. The sorceress, she is good at elemental magic, fire, lightning, ice. The druid, controls the power of nature, he can summon wild animals and windstorms to fight alongside himself. I get to choose my character. Bulet and Che looked at the 7 characters, completely dumbfounded. We can choose what we want to. He grabbed An Cheng's shoulder and asked, "What should we choose?" An Cheng frowned. The sorceress looks like a cultivator. Since most of my own spiritual spells are fire-based, I'll choose the sorceress. Then I'll choose the druid, Bulet and Che said. Does he practice heavenly Dao? He can control the powers of nature, so he's obviously strong. I'll try him out. What about Brother Ouyang? An Cheng asked, who are you going to choose? I'll choose the sorceress too. Ouyang Cheng laughed, I'll practice lightning spells and you can practice fire spells. I bet only idiots would choose to play with these warrior-like characters. Low-level warriors will probably choose them. The 3 of them laughed before quickly entering the game. Fang Qi face twitched. Why do you laugh and comment on my choice of character? Su Zixin felt like she was going to pass the game today, so she came especially early, arriving outside the shop by 7:50 am. It's open already. Surprised, Su Zixin looked in. The shop had completely changed. Did I come to the wrong place? She looked inside and immediately saw Fang Qi, who was sipping on his bottle of Sprite. I didn't. Confused, Su Zixin walked in through the doors and noticed new items written on the blackboard. There were new games and drinks. She didn't care for the new game since she was determined to pass Resident Evil 1 today. However, she was interested in this drink. She pointed at the little blackboard. Sir, what's a Sprite? Can I try a bottle? Fang Qi nodded his head and gave her one. However, upon touching the bottle, Su Zixin instinctively took her hand back and asked, It's cold. It's just a little cold, it won't freeze you up. Fang Qi laughed. Then, I'll give it a try. Su Zixin trusted Fang Qi now more than ever. Moreover, she was a girl who liked to try out new things, so she put playing aside for now and decided to give Fang Qi drink a taste. An iced drink. An Cheng and the others glanced at each other. It was pretty hot nowadays, so it was the perfect time for iced drinks. How amusing! Your shop sells drinks like other restaurants? You should really leave these matters to experts. And Cheng laughed. Upon hearing his criticism, Fang Qi shrugged unhappily. If you don't want to buy it, just don't. Did he anger you? The young man in black had enough of Fang Qi attitude. This is just a shop for playing games, it isn't the Wind and Moon Pavilion. The game is expensive, but it is fine since it is interesting. However, drinks aren't this shop's specialty, why is it so expensive? Does this drink help with increasing warrior qi? By how much? Fang Qi shook his head. No. The young man in a silver hairpiece mocked, can your drink enhance intelligence or cure diseases? Fang Qi shook his head. No. The same young man slammed the table as his face darkened. What courage! Your drink can't do anything, how can a bottle of horse P*SS be worth so many crystals? Fang Qi shook his head and replied emotionlessly, my drink tastes better. How good can it be? Is it better than the Wind and Moon Pavilion's Yulur wine? Buletin asked with disdain. An Cheng removed a jade-like wine calabash from his waist and asked, exactly, can it compare to my Yulur wine? Hey! Ouyang Cheng, the fatty in blue, licked his dry lips. Brethren, you still have Yulur wine with you? That's a specialty wine from the Wind and Moon Pavilion. Brethren, can I also have a sip? Buletin asked. Of course. The young man with the small silver hairpiece glanced in Fang Qi direction. Sure, this shop is interesting, but 3 crystals for a drink? This angered him, and he looked at Fang Qi as if Fang Qi was someone who had never seen anything good. Would you like to try this wine? You can then compare it with your own drink and see if you have the audacity to continue selling yours for 3 crystals a bottle. During this time, Su Zixin had taken a sip of Sprite with a straw. As soon as the drink entered her mouth, her facial expression changed drastically. How is it? I told you so. An Cheng sneered, you're from the Su family, aren't you? The Su family is full of brave warriors who defend our borders. You're from a famous family, don't you think it's embarrassing to drink something like this? No. Su Zixin's pretty eyes narrowed into slits, she had never had anything as good as this. The sweet sensation glided down her throat, and countless bubbles danced on her tongue as if the thousands of taste buds had opened at the same time and magnified the sensation. She could clearly taste how different this drink was compared to anything else she drank before. After her first sip, she felt like she had taken a cold shower on a hot day. Her entire body, even her pores, felt a blast of chills. This is amazing! Su Zixin's face lit up with happiness as she exclaimed. Amazing! The guys were confused and slapped the table. You're a girl of status, why are you helping the owner trick us? An Cheng sneered, don't you dare trick me, or else your entire family will suffer from the consequences. Why would the owner trick you? Song Qingfeng and the others walked into the shop. The owner makes hundreds of crystals every day, why would he be interested in tricking 3 crystals out of you? Those 3 guys were immediately at a loss for words. Song Qingfeng took out some crystals and placed them onto the table. It's rare for this shop to have something new like this, give us 1 bottle each. Sure. Fang Qi immediately handed Song Qingfeng, Lin Xiao and Su Luo each a bottle of Sprite. Lin Xiao held the bottle in his hand. Hey, it's made of glass, how interesting. Then, the 3 of them each took a sip. Almost immediately, a fresh feeling entered their throats and spread to their limbs. They even felt like their pores were emitting a refreshing coolness. Lin Xiao's face was lit with pleasure as he looked at the Sprite bottle in his hand. This drink is amazing. I feel refreshed with just 1 sip. It's so good. I felt like I just took a bath in an ice spring on this hot day. Su Luo couldn't help but take another sip. This drink is so magical. I feel like there are hundreds of thousands of bubbles popping in my mouth. Song Qingfeng's face lit up with surprise as he gave Fang Qi a thumbs up. This drink is amazing, it's exhilarating. Does it taste better than Yulur wine? Ouyang Cheng, An Cheng, and Buletin Che asked. No matter how much disdain An Cheng and the others felt toward Fang Qi drink, they were still wavered by Song Qing Feng, Su Luo, and Lin Xiao's expressions. Do you think that I've never had Yule wine before? Song Qing Feng looked at them with contempt. Compared to Sprite, Yule wine is no better than horse P*SS. Horse P*SS. Horse P*SS. Instantly enraged, An Cheng slammed his table and said, the Yule wine I brought is a specialty wine from the Wind and Moon Pavilion. 1 sip is equivalent to 10 days of cultivation. The taste is the best in Zhuhua City, even the emperor praised this wine when he visited. It's just 3 crystals, why don't you try and find out if it's good or not yourselves? Song Qing Feng mocked, can't the 3 of you afford to pay a couple of crystals? Ouyang Cheng threw 9 crystals at Fang Qi and said, then we'll try it. If we're satisfied by the taste, we will disregard its price. If we're not. He pointed at An Cheng who was sitting beside him and said, your cultivator may be able to throw Su Fuwei out, but this is An Cheng, the son of the Castellan of Zhuhua City. You might want to think twice before challenging him. Fang Qi, on the other hand, handed 3 bottles of Sprite to them with no emotions on his face. As soon as An Cheng took a sip, he felt the refreshing sweetness combined with the scent of lemon bursting in his mouth. Numerous bubbles danced on his tongue, stimulating the taste buds in his mouth as well as every nerve in his body. He was completely dumbfounded. It's just a small shop by the side of the road, how can this drink taste so good? It feels magical. The Yule wine's recipe was created by Master Yu after years of research. It was made with 1,000-year-old spiritual flowers and a dozen spiritual herbs. I bet this drink is made from regular river water. Fang Qi looked at them in disdain. Sprite is made from mineral water from under the snowy mountains, which had been tempered by 1,000-year-old volcanic rocks. It circulated for hundreds of years and was eventually melted and filtered. It's cold spring water from volcanic rocks. The sweetness, confused, Ouyang Cheng looked at the Sprite in his hand and said, is it honey? Aside from the 1,000-year-old tea honey that the Wind and Moon Pavilion provides. Fang Qi interrupted him. The honey is produced from the pollen of a spiritual flower called the Ice Heart flower. It can help you calm down. The non-stop bubbles in your mouths are created with an advanced future machine called the high-efficiency silent compressor. This spiritual artifact is especially made to compress and inject the drink with bubbles. Everyone was shocked speechless from listening to how delicately the drinks at the internet cafe were made. Soon, the 3 of them finished their drinks. Ouyang Cheng took out 9 crystals and said, give us each another bottle. I'm sorry. Fang Qi took a sip of his Sprite and returned to his seat. Each person can only buy 1 bottle a day. What? They wanted to enjoy the Sprite more, but he wasn't going to sell them any? The 3 of them were furious, and An Cheng walked up, grabbing Fang Qi by the collar. You'd better send a box of Sprite to the Castellan mansion every day, or else I'm going to make you pay. Fang Qi laughed. I will give you 3 seconds. If you don't let go of me, I will assume that you are causing trouble. Young Masterin, young Masterin. Ouyang Cheng immediately stopped him and whispered, we didn't bring anyone here today, a wise man knows when to back off. An Cheng wasn't an idiot, he thought back at what happened with Xiao Yulv, and his expression wavered for a few seconds before he finally let go of Fang Qi collar. However, they all looked dejected. Should we have a couple sips of Yule wine? Buletin Che suggested. How can I drink that now? An Cheng cursed, it's complete horse P*SS. Song Qing Feng and the others burst out laughing as they looked at the bottle in their hands, which were only half empty. I knew the owner would set a weird rule like that. They thought. Come on, let's play. After paying, Fang Qi reminded them with a smile. It's hot outside, games are better with Sprite. Song Qing Feng nodded and smiled back. When I'm playing, I'm sure I'll feel calmer and more collected if I take a sip. What, You haven't seen it. You're so behind. For some reason, a trend began to grow in Zhuhua City. Today was important for the older players at the internet cafe. A few people were going to pass Resident Evil 1, Virtual Reality Remake. A group of people huddled behind Su Zixin, Liang Shi, and even Wang Tai. The three of them were most likely to pass the game today. Waves of applause rang out from the internet cafe again and again. Thanks to the expansion, this place was packed with more people than ever. Li Haoran was a cultivator who specialized in creating spiritual items in the Blue Flame sect. He wasn't from a prestigious family, but ever since he was recruited into the Blue Flame sect, he was taken in as the disciple of Jun Yangzi, the highest-ranking Forge Grandmaster in the Wu Daoist Alliance since his talent in forging was discovered. With that, his status quickly skyrocketed. Although he didn't have a great family background, he was still a cultivator who could forge. Therefore, he received special treatment no matter where he went in Dajin. Right now, he was the advanced forge master at the Blue Flame Pavilion, the best spiritual artifact shop in Zhuhua City. I can't believe that Mr. Mu would ask me to come and check out a shop in the commoner region of the city. Li Haoran's status was so high that he had never been to this remote commoner region of the city. Aside from people like Song Qingfeng who were new to the city, the others who had relatively high statuses wouldn't set a foot into an area like this. But, since this shop was capable of kicking Xiao Yulv and Su Fuwei out, then it's probably more complicated than it seems. He rubbed his chin and walked up to Origin's internet club. He looked up. Wait. This shop isn't small at all. He could clearly see many people through the glass wall. There were ordinary warriors, but they were all pretty strong. The rest of the people were almost all of noble status. What surprised him the most was that even Yu Yangcheng, An Cheng, and Buletin Che, the top-tier young masters of the city, were in there. That's a first. Li Haoran was completely speechless. After he entered, he was just about to go up to the three of them when he heard them shout. Brothers, help me! Or else I'm going to die. Use your inferno. Fire bolts are too weak. Why does your charged bolt keep missing? Stand closer. Closer. The charged bolt keeps moving left and right, I can't do anything about it. Hurry up. Blood Raven is about to die. Li Haoran glanced at their screens and saw the three of them being followed by a giant herd of zombies. They were jumping up and down as a monster wearing a set of red armor attacked them. Then, the monster exploded. It exploded. The screen was lit up by gold lights. Gold item. Their eyes shone. Light crossbow. Suddenly, the air around them froze, and everything became horrifically quiet. They looked at each other. Out of the three of them, two were sorceresses and one was a druid. After a while, someone finally opened their mouth and asked, "Does anyone want this item? I'm going to go hand in my quest." Wu Yangcheng immediately opened a portal and ran off. "I think my items are broken," An Cheng said awkwardly, "allow me to go back and fix it." Buletin Che, "Put away the rewards first and identify them, maybe we can sell them for a lot of money." Buletin Che was left speechless. Confused, Li Haoran patted their seats and asked, "What are the three of you doing?" "Brother Li." Upon hearing his voice, the three of them turned around and saw Li Haoran. Their eyes lit up. "Why are you here?" Li Haoran touched his chin. "I heard this place was interesting, so I came to check it out." "It's so much more than that." An Cheng immediately pulled Li Haoran down. "Let's go, let's kill monsters and get items together." "Get items?" Li Haoran questioned unhappily, "Are these items better than the ones at the Blue Flame Pavilion?" As an outstanding forge master, whose master was the most famous forge grandmaster in the Wu Daoist Alliance, he despised using others' spiritual artifacts. "It's just a spiritual artifact." Before he finished speaking, the others helped him enter the game and choose a class. Then, he was dumbstruck. "This is a spiritual artifact." An Cheng and the others quickly handed him a couple of blue items. How are these items made? He looked at the gear in his hands in shock. Short staff 2-hand damage, 1 to 5 durability, 20/20 plus 2 to ice bolt, sorceress only, plus 2 to charged bolt, sorceress only, plus 50% damage to undead. As soon as he laid hands on the short staff, he had a feeling that he could use 2 unique spiritual spells even though he didn't know what they were specifically. He also received a pair of self-healing leather gloves. Self-healing. These special features could only be seen on super powerful spiritual artifacts, but the 3 of them gave it to him just like that. How in the world were these spiritual artifacts made? Li Haoran observed the items in his hands. He felt like these items were created by a unique forging technology unknown to him. The system had used rune technology to create these items, so it was natural for him to be confused by them. Although Li Haoran was a little confused, he had a feeling that the items in his hands were extremely powerful. Aside from him, Song Qingfeng and other players who just began playing Diablo 2 felt the same way. Items appear after killing monsters? Skills can be learned by simply putting points into the skill tree? Items can give them powerful attributes? Surprises were around every corner, and all the players' eyes lit up upon realizing the magic of this world. In a corner of the internet cafe, Lan Yan casually took a sip of the Sprite, and her face was filled with satisfaction. It's delicious. Ms. Nalan, how can there be something this tasty in this world? Nalan Mingxiu took a giant swig of Sprite with no expression on her face. I tried everything I could over the past few days, but I still don't know who is behind this shop. Before we find out, we shouldn't drink these things, just in case they pose a threat to us. But it's really good, Lan Yan squinted her eyes as she sipped happily on her straw. Anyways, we have to be careful. Suddenly Nalan Mingxiu felt like she was sucking in air. Only then did she look down at her bottle and froze for a second. Oh! I finished it all. Dajin seemed peaceful to outsiders, but the truth was that there were plots and conspiracies everywhere. The night fell. After she reached her daily playtime limit, Nalan Mingxiu watched Fang Qi play Diablo for the night. Out of curiosity, she tried this game out for half an hour today. The map of the virtual reality version of Diablo 2 was much bigger. Rogue encampment had taverns and civilian residences, making everything seem extremely real and lifelike. The game was so realistic that it became much more interesting. Role-playing games allowed Nalan Mingxiu to play any role she wanted and become one with her character. She felt natural in the game, even when talking with commoners. In real life, she rarely even laid eyes on people of lower status. Only during times like this could she completely unhinge the pressure on her shoulders. In the game, she lived a completely different life. Without the burden of status, she could interact however she wanted to. She could also be happy about leveling up and getting all sorts of items. She didn't have to calculate and manipulate like she did in real life. She could show her unhappiness if she wanted to, and she could laugh if she felt like it. She didn't have to worry about people trying to figure her out. But now, she suddenly felt confused. This game seems even more interesting than Resident Evil. So should I continue to play games here? I lowered my guard. She finally came back to her senses and stood up from her chair. She had never felt like this her entire life. Then, she turned and looked around the internet cafe. She realized that most people had already left. It was midnight. It's so late. Just then, Fang Qi stood up from his seat and stretched casually. He glanced at Nalan Mingxiu and Lan Yan with surprise in his eyes. You're still here. We're about to leave. Nalan Mingxiu's expression went back to its original icy coldness. As soon as she opened the door, she felt drops of water on her face. She looked up at the dark sky, and her white robe fluttered crazily in the wind that was rushing into the internet cafe through the open door. She walked out and reached out her hand. An ice-cold water droplet landed on her palm as the fierce wind blew in the air. It's raining? In the summer, it was extremely humid before rainfall. The clouds were like lids of a pressure cooker, making the air humid and annoying people to their cores. After Nalan Mingxiu and Lan Yan, the last few customers also left. Fang Qi walked up to the doors and closed them. Suddenly, he noticed something strange outside his internet cafe, causing him to furrow his eyebrows. The night looked like an ink wash painting as raindrops fell from the sky. Aside from the light inside Fang Qi's shop, everywhere else was pitch black. It was midnight, all the other shops on the street had closed. The roads were dark as well. Lan Yan held an umbrella for her and Nalan Mingxiu as they walked straight into the depth of a dark alley. At this moment, Nalan Mingxiu's footsteps paused. "Ms. Nalan, you've been slacking off." A gentle sigh came from the roof of a building beside them. This voice was so abrupt that the two of them finally noticed rows of black shadows on roofs of buildings around them. "Ms. Nalan." Lan Yan's expression darkened, she knew they were here for the two of them. "Did that big brother of mine send you all?" Nalan Mingxiu was calm. "Yes, I've indeed slacked off, I didn't even notice that people were following me." The figure in the middle of the group sneered as he reached out his right hand and waved it in the air. "Do not leave either of them alive." Then, 8 figures jumped down and charged toward the two girls like black eagles. Blade energy filled with murderous spirits were emitted from every single figure as they advanced like the howling wind. Their warrior chi was able to leave their bodies. They were all Grandmaster warriors. The 8 assassins were all at least Grandmaster warriors. Their target was this young girl who had just reached the realm of Master Warrior. The last assassin stayed on the roof and didn't move. A team like them was virtually unbeatable. With a serious expression on her face, Nalan Mingxiu was forced to back off. Soon, there was nowhere else to hide. A giant bolt of blade energy flew after her like a shark honing in on a defenseless penguin. With Nalan Mingxiu's strength, she was no match for Grandmaster warriors. Suddenly, she created a spiritual barrier around her before she was sent flying into the air. Boom! The house behind her collapsed upon impact. "Ms. Nalan!" Lan Yan cried out. Just as she was about to run up and check how badly injured Nalan Mingxiu was, she heard a sharp wind echo beside her ears. Swoosh! A streak of blade energy slammed before her, and a crack formed on the ground in front of her. A man in black slowly blocked her and sneered, "Don't get distracted during combat, Ms. Lan Yan." Nalan Mingxiu, who was knocked away by the blade energy, had a spiritual barrier shining around her. It was obvious that it was a protective spiritual artifact that could be activated by warrior chi. However, the barrier quickly lost its effect under the continuous attacks of the Grandmaster warriors. Nalan Mingxiu instinctively placed her hand on her chest. There was a small jade dagger hanging off her necklace. Dangerous energies emitted from the jade dagger. The figure who was still on the roof disappeared. In a split second, he reappeared in front of her. Then, a cold light dashed toward her. "Ms. Nalan, we know what you are capable of, I suggest that you think twice before acting rashly." This attack wasn't deadly, but it seemed to puncture a vital spot in her body. Chaotic warrior chi exploded from her body, running around loosely. Then, the crystal-clear jade dagger she held in her hand suddenly broke into pieces. Nalan Mingxiu spat out a mouthful of blood, and her face became paler than ever. This man was at least an ancestral warrior. Her big brother ordered an ancestral warrior and 8 Grandmaster warriors to assassinate her? Nalan Mingxiu smiled bitterly. He sure thinks highly of me. Upon seeing her most powerful trump card overthrown, she felt like the strength in her body slowly left her. Her icy expression finally showed a hint of dreariness and despair. She was proud, smart, and extremely talented. She was the shiniest pearl of the Nalan family that was supposed to be one of those few that stood on the tip of the pyramid. But today, she was going to quietly die here. How pathetic! She had a feeling that things weren't as simple as she thought they were, but she had no strength left to figure it out. Something feels wrong. Fang Qi shook his head in confusion upon locking his doors. Forget it, I've been playing Diablo 2 all day, and it's time to rest. He stretched and was just about to head upstairs when he received a notification from his system. You received an emergency task. Emergency task? Confused, Fang Qi wondered what kind of emergency task there would be in the middle of the night, so he instinctively opened his system interface. The system detected that a customer is being attacked on her way home. To make sure each customer can play at the internet cafe with a peace of mind, you are given this special task. New task, sudden attack in the rain. New task gear, rocket launcher, unlimited ammunition, please obtain from the cabinet, task award, a permanent rocket launcher. Task description, customers should get to play safely and peacefully at the internet cafe. Although this rocket launcher was more portable than the one thrown down from the helicopter in the game, it could kill the tyrant just as easily. Fang Qi threw the rocket launcher over his shoulder, opened the door to his shop, and left. The rain was coming down harder than ever. Ms. Nalan! A shriek resonated across the night sky. Lan Yan looked at Nalan Mingxiu helplessly as her face lit up with shock and horror. The latter had fallen onto the ground, and her face had become as pale as a ghost. Don't you find it weird? Why isn't the person who is secretly protecting you here? The leader of the assassins smiled coldly and said, I guess you won't see him again. Nalan Mingxiu's expression was icy. This was probably the greatest danger she had ever come across her entire life. Even though life in the Nalan family felt like treading on thin ice, she had never been forced into a corner as tight as this one. Should I say that you are confident or stupid? Upon realizing that Nalan Mingxiu no longer posed a threat to him, the assassin in black finally took off the bamboo hat on his head, showing his thin face and hook nose. Your whereabouts have never been fixed. You always conduct a thorough investigation of wherever you go, and my young master never even got a chance to kill you, no matter how hard he tried. The young master asked me to thank the owner of that shop. Thanks to him, we found a loophole in your habits, my diligent little lady. Impressive. This assassin's expression became murderous as he slowly raised the dagger in his hand. Too bad you'll never have the chance to hear me thanking him. Nalan Mingxiu slowly closed her eyes. She blamed herself for being so reckless during a dangerous time like this. She sighed as she was now on the edge of a cliff. No matter how smart and calm she was, she couldn't find a way to save herself. How ironic, she thought. The tip of the dagger, mixed in with the fierce wind, came slamming down on her like a streak of white light, and it was so bright that she was almost blinded. She could feel a blast of icy energy approaching her. Perhaps in the next second, she would be torn up by that energy. However, in the next second, she heard a crisp metal collision sound. Tink! The iciness suddenly disappeared. She opened her eyes and saw a thick, black barrel steadily blocking that shiny dagger. Someone saved her from the hands of death while her life was hanging by a thread. She had no idea who would save her at a time like this. No one, not even the city guards, would come to the secluded and quiet civilian district at a time like this, especially in this rain. Who could it be? Mr. Fang Qi. Flabbergasted, Lan Yan looked at the man who stopped the dagger in amazement. How could it be? Why would Fang Qi come here at a time like this? She didn't understand why he would come, but he was standing before them. Who is it? Nalan Ji froze and squinted at the man who stopped him from killing Nalan Mingxiu. Did I not hear him because of the sound of the rain? Nalan Ji looked closely at the person who stopped his dagger. He seemed like a young man who wasn't even a master warrior yet. Perhaps he was outstanding compared to the other young men of his age, but he was no more than an ant in front of an ancestral warrior like him. Just now, Nalan Ji didn't use much strength since he was trying to kill a woman who didn't even have the strength left in her to resist. Fang Qi. Lan Yan looked at Fang Qi as if he was their last chance at survival. She grabbed his arm and cried helplessly, Mr. Fang, please save Ms. Nalan. She regretted not stopping Nalan Mingxiu from going to Fang Qi's shop, Now, they had completely fallen into their enemy's trap, even Nalan Mingxiu's last hidden cards had been uncovered. She really didn't know how they could escape from this calamity. Lan Yan wasn't that talented, so she felt like her death wouldn't make too much of a difference. However, a person as talented as Nalan Mingxiu shouldn't die here so powerlessly. Isn't that what I'm here for? With a smile, Fang Qi looked at Nalan Ji and said, "Let's talk about this. Can you pick another time to murder someone?" Fang Qi then pointed at Nalan Mingxiu and said in all seriousness, "If words got out that someone died because she played too late at my shop, I'm going to be humiliated, aren't I?" Oh! Nalan Ji froze for a second before quickly realizing what was happening. Then, he laughed arrogantly, "So, you're the owner of that little shop?" "Yup." Fang Qi nodded with no expression on his face. "I thought you were going to thank me, can you do me this favor?" "Do you a favor?" Nalan Ji's face twisted as if he had just heard the funniest joke in the world. "Who do you think you are? How dare you ask me for a favor? The way you went back on your words so easily sure is annoying." Fang Qi shrugged and said casually, "But since my shop operates until this hour, I have to ensure the safety of my customers." Nalan Mingxiu sighed quietly. She never thought that Fang Qi would be the one to come to her rescue. Although she knew Fang Qi powers, he was faced against an ancestral warrior. No matter how strong he was still a 16-year-old kid. Was he capable of defeating Grandmaster warriors and ancestral warriors? "Thank you, but you're not Chris from Resident Evil, nor are you the main characters in Diablo. Please don't overestimate yourself. If you don't act rationally, you're going to die with me." She sat on the ground weakly and said in calmness. "Ms. Expressionless, no one will marry you if you keep up that vicious tongue of yours," Fang Qi said in all earnestness. "Although this is my first time engaging in real-life combat, can you have some faith in me?" Ms. Expressionless. Lan Yan's giant eyes blinked as she thought, did he just say that this is his first time engaging in real-life combat? If that is the case, who would have faith in you? Lan Yan felt like crying. Nalan Mingxiu froze as well. Did he just call me Ms. Expressionless? Fang Qi removed the rocket launcher from his back and waved his hand at Lan Yan, gesturing her to retreat with Nalan Mingxiu. Kill him! With Nalan Ji's command, the 8 assassins charged at Fang Qi all at once. These 8 assassins were of the same team and had been through strict training. Therefore, they were extremely well organized. Fang Qi pulled his trigger. Swoop! A rocket dashed out the barrel, letting out a long flame tail. What in the world is that? The assassin in the middle saw the flames and quickly protected himself with his sword. Boom! A violent explosion shook the entire road they were on. Out of the 8 powerful Grandmaster warriors, 4 of them were instantly engulfed by the flames. Nothing is impossible with a blast of my rocket launcher. Fang Qi smiled as he aimed, pulled the trigger, and shot out another rocket. If there is, I'll just shoot another rocket. Swoop! The remaining assassins who had been injured by the previous blast were immediately blown away. At that very second, Lan Yan's brain went blank while Nalan Mingxiu froze. "R! Rocket launcher!" Lan Yan exclaimed, wasn't that thing just made up for Resident Evil? Did she just see the weapon from Resident Evil in real life? It seemed like the exact same rocket launcher. How is this possible? "I told you these things could be created," Fang Qi replied calmly. He wondered what Lan Yan's face would look like if he told her that he injected himself with the T-virus. Fang Qi lifted up his rocket launcher again, aiming at Nalan Ji. "Now, you're the only one left." Lan Yan and Nalan Mingxiu stared at Fang Qi, both at a loss for words. Even the howling wind quieted down. At that moment, the entire street fell silent. All the raindrops seemed to have frozen solid, like pieces of lead and not moving at all. Just then, Nalan Ji chopped down with his sword, seemingly slowly but actually with great speed. The air became as solid as steel as the wind and rain wrapped around the sword as it struck at Fang Qi. Crack! A streak of lightning seemed to split open heaven and earth. Before the sword reached Fang Qi, the road in front of him suddenly cracked open. Mountain lifting strike! Lan Yan exclaimed, "This is an ancestral warrior technique." She felt despair looming over her and blamed herself for being stupid enough to ask Fang Qi to deal with an ancestral warrior. It didn't matter how powerful the rocket launcher was, it could at most only threaten an ancestral warrior. Under normal circumstances, ancestral warriors all knew how to avoid attacks. If the ancestral warriors wanted to, it was extremely difficult for the rocket launcher to hit them. Moreover, there was a limit to the amount of ammo in the rocket launcher. When the players were playing the game, they had 4 shots. However, the ancestral warrior's chi was endless like the ocean. How could the rocket launcher kill the ancestral warrior with limited ammo? It was simply impossible. It would be hard, even if the rocket launcher provided unlimited ammo. Moreover, even a master warrior couldn't even lift an arm under this much pressure. As this thought crossed her mind, she suddenly opened her eyes wide in surprise. Fang Qi slowly raised his hand and pulled the trigger. The horrific pressure around him didn't affect him, not even a little bit. Fang Qi's body had been strengthened by the T-virus. Therefore, his strength was enough to compete against a master warrior, let alone other empowerments that were provided by the mutation. Swoosh! After the rocket flew out a few meters, it seemed to have smashed onto an invisible wall and blasted into pieces. The strong explosion immediately broke a hole through the powerful warrior chi around them. Then, he pulled his trigger 2 more times. Thunderous explosions erupted, and a bright light sprung out in front of them. The powerful and incomparable explosion immediately destroyed a lot of his opponent's sword energy. Then, Fang Qi fired 2 more shots. The tremendous impact force pushed Nalanji back. As soon as he eliminated the aftershock, he heard a sharp breeze blow toward him. Without thinking, he quickly leaned back. A rocket barely missed his chest. Nalanji's expression was as icy as it could be. He finally realized that he didn't seem to be a match for this powerful weapon. However, even though its speed was fast enough for a regular man, he could easily dodge them as an ancestral warrior. As soon as he recovered, Fang Qi would be dead. Swoop! Fang Qi fired the 6th shot. "He's attacking my feet." Nalanji immediately jumped up, and the rocket blew up under his feet. Giant air waves blasted up along with countless pieces of metals. The immense impact force of the explosion and countless sharp metal fragments made it hard for one to defend themselves. A regular master warrior would have died from it. However, Nalanji waved his sword in the air and concentrated all his warrior chi in front of him, creating a strong and solid invisible barrier. The thick barrier was capable of blocking out everything, from the metal fragments flying at him to the impact force of the explosion. After the airwave blew past either side of the barrier, with Nalanji sustaining 0 injuries. Fang Qi fired 5 shots, but Nalanji was left unscratched. Damn it! Lan Yan was filled with despair. She seemed to have overestimated the power of the rocket launcher. Ancestral warriors didn't even have to run away since they could block rockets as they wished. How could Fang Qi defeat him? Nalan Mingxia watched the battle with an icy expression on her face. Each technique used by the ancestral warriors could reach a godlike level, and even great spiritual artifacts could not defeat them easily. As soon as Fang Qi ran out of ammo, Nalanji would immediately defeat him. This was an unfair battle. He had to create a miracle to win. Rainwater landed on the barrel of Fang Qi rocket launcher before evaporating into white mist. Although Fang Qi seemed to be on the offensive, he couldn't take advantage of the situation. A murderous expression appeared on Nalanji's face as he said, "You will soon die." However, he failed to notice that Fang Qi was smiling upon seeing that the impact of the explosion had sent him into midair. Flames suddenly rose in the night skies. Nalanji was sent flying into the air by the impact as if he was being thrown toward the flames. Nalanji's expression changed dramatically. Although ancestral warriors had the ability to fly for a short amount of time, the inertia, along with the fact that he was in the air, stopped him from changing directions. As soon as Nalanji was blown into the air, Fang Qi immediately fired another shot. The timing was perfect. He didn't give Nalanji time to eliminate the impact force of the explosion, meaning that the latter couldn't dodge. Once I block this attack, I will rip you into pieces. Nalanji spat ferociously as he gathered his warrior qi into his sword once again, holding it in front of his chest. Boom! A giant flame erupted in the sky, but Nalanji's semi-spherical barrier blocked the flames. He stopped the rocket with his bare hands, and he blocked the huge force and countless metal fragments with his vigorous warrior qi. However, because of the impact, his body was once again blown into the sky. Swoop! An air-piercing noise sounded again. Fang Qi fired another rocket at him. The power of the explosion pushed his body out to where this new rocket was targeting, and Nalanji had no choice but to block it again. In the end, flame after flame lit up the nightly sky, and Nalanji was pushed high into the air by the endless explosions. Fang Qi fired another shot, but it didn't hit its target. Fang Qi had no idea where Nalanji had been shot off to. Fang Qi froze for a second. I missed. Although the T-virus improved his overall abilities, and Resident Evil helped his practice his shooting skills, this was as far as his capabilities went. Fang Qi turned around, feeling awkward that he had made a mistake. He explained to Nalan Mingxiu and Lan Yan, generally speaking, a good shooter would have been able to juggle him in the air. I think I need to practice a little more. Nalan Mingxiu was speechless while Lan Yan, who felt like she had just survived a disaster, burst out laughing upon seeing Fang Qi's awkward expression. She wiped off her tears and pouted, "Mr. Fang, I think you were just trying to show off your skills, but you completely failed. Can you cut me some slack and not expose the truth?" Fang Qi replied awkwardly. Nalan Mingxiu, on the other hand, was buried in her own thoughts. The rockets have the ability to send enemies into the sky? It could do that? TL note, the horse stance is an important posture in Asian martial arts and takes its name from the position assumed when riding a horse. Fang Qi threw the rocket launcher over his shoulder and looked into the distance. "I think if I were him, I will never try to bully the two of you again," he said. Lan Yan quickly took out a fragrant elixir and fed it to Nalan Mingxiu. Only then did the latter's face regain some color. It was already the next day when the rain stopped, and the golden sunshine soaked through the clouds and scattered across the soaked ground. The shadows of last night had officially become of the past. What a great day! Sunshine seeped into Fang Qi's bedroom as he stretched lazily. He could drink Sprite, play games, and use the unlimited rocket launcher if he wanted to. His life excited him. Of course, not everyone was doing as well as Fang Qi. For example, An Cheng, Ouyang Cheng, and Buletin Che came out from Crimson Jade Pavilion with dark circles under their eyes. As soon as they walked out, people began talking about them. "Do you think those young masters have sort of disease? They called over a dozen girls last night but didn't listen to them sing or watch them dance. They just drank and talked all night. They talked about how to obtain fire skills in some kind of skill tree, the possibility of dual elemental sorceresses, and how to choose and arrange gear. What in the world do you think they were talking about?" The three of them walked on the streets and looked up at the bright skies in surprise. "It's already daytime. Origins should be open by now. Come on, let's go drink some Sprite." An Cheng's eyes lit up. "Let's go, we can find out how to gain attribute points today." The three of them immediately shook off their exhaustion and headed toward the internet cafe excitedly. Li Haoran left Blue Flame Pavilion with the same exhausted look on his face. "What's wrong with Master Li?" "I don't know. He locked himself up in the artifact-making room as soon as he came back yesterday, trying to make all sorts of weird things. There were 3 weird spiritual artifacts on the spiritual artifacts display stand. Descriptions were even pasted beside them. Some cultivators walked into the shop and glanced over at the new spiritual artifacts on the display stand. Outstanding Frost Rhinoceros Horn Attack, 4 to 21 Durability, 20/20th required level, Spiritual Spring Realm plus 30% Attack Enhancement plus 7 Ice Damage Cold Resistance plus 10% Hey. The cultivators glanced at each other in confusion. A female disciple who worked at Blue Flame Pavilion smiled awkwardly and tried to introduce the item. This is a new spiritual artifact Master Li Haoran created. Damn it, I don't know what else to say. The female disciple felt like crying, working here was so hard. Thanks to the increased number of computers, customers realized that they didn't have to line up anymore. Therefore, the mornings at the internet cafe became considerably calmer. Sir, give us each a bottle of Sprite. An Cheng, Ouyang Cheng, and Buletin Che walked into the shop. Can we drink another bottle today? Yeah. Fang Qi handed them each a bottle of Sprite with no emotions on his face, and the 3 of them quickly opened the bottles and took a giant swig. Ah! An Cheng felt the cool liquid flowing into his stomach, and his entire body felt refreshed. His exhaustion completely disappeared, and he couldn't help but moan in pleasure. This is delicious. This morning, Ouyang Cheng felt like a spiritual artifact that had lost its essence. However, after taking a sip of the Sprite, his energy came right back to him. His mind, originally filled with noise and annoyance, felt so refreshed as if it had been washed clean by spring water from the mountains. He was elated by what he felt. Sprite can do this? I feel like I can taste the cool spring water that had been flowing under the snowy mountains for thousands of years. Buletin Che took tiny sips of his Sprite as he enjoyed the flavor. Upon seeing his friends glancing at him, he looked at their bottles and then back at his own. Then, he covered his bottle with his hands and said, "What are the 2 of you looking at?" The other 2 men froze for a second before looking down at their bottles. We finished ours again. Ouyang Cheng gave a friendly smile as he stuck out a finger and said, "We're all brothers, so let me take a sip." Just a tiny sip. A bottle of Sprite can't be shared. Just then, Fang Qi said casually, "Those who violate this rule will never be welcomed back here." Ha ha ha. Buletin Che laughed as he went back to sipping his Sprite happily. He said, "It's not that I don't want you guys to have any." An Cheng and Ouyang Cheng looked at each other dejectedly. "We have to wait until tomorrow again. Let's go play. Let's go. It's time to kill the Countess." The 3 of them felt much better after drinking the Sprite. Everyone inside the shop felt happy and content, but after what happened last night, the Nalan family wasn't so peaceful. A skinny elder wearing an embroidered robe sat inside a magnificent hall. The elder, lying against the fur of a ferocious beast, slowly opened his eyes, his mouth opened and closed as if he was talking to himself. He murmured, "Do you think you can interfere with the matters of the Nalan family just because I'm old? Master, please don't be mad." A shadow appeared from the darkness and said, "We are looking into what happened last night. What's going on with Ji?" The black shadow responded, "Nalan Ji kept saying that he was bewitched by powers outside the family and committed suicide to escape punishment. Young master said he didn't know who it was and gave Miss Nalan some medicine. He didn't know who it was." Unconvinced, the elder repeated, "So, who was the person that interfered and saved Mingxiu?" "I did some investigation. He is the owner of a small shop in the east of the city." "The owner of a small shop?" "Yes." However, this shadow had no idea how the owner of a small shop managed to injure Nalan Ji so severely. Are small shop owners all this powerful nowadays? The elder lifted a hand. "Look into the owner's background. How could the owner of a small shop interfere with the power struggle of a noble family?" "Yes, a noble family. They were like a giant beast in the southeast. When the beast opened its eyes, even the cultivators and prestigious characters had to back off." "Yes. They were right," Fang Qi was just the owner of a small shop. Right now, he was casually enjoying his game, having no idea what was happening within the deep waters. In other words, he didn't even want to know. The only reason Fang Qi accidentally destroyed the conspiracy in the Nalan family was because he wanted his customers to play happily and peacefully at his shop. Fang Qi hummed a song as he fought his way to Andariel's hiding place. He felt like he had leveled up a couple times this morning, and he thought, I knew it. Playing games is the only way to go. The results of his investigations left him in disbelief. Therefore, he decided to go check out this shop owner. However, when he reached the door of the internet cafe, he saw a black shadow sneaking inside. He recognized the black shadow and quickly followed her in. Then, he realized who it was. Isn't that Lan Yan? Sir. Lan Yan took out 6 crystals. Get me 2 bottles of Sprite. Sprite? Nalan Ying was confused. According to my research, Sprite is the specialty drink of this shop, but how good can the drink of a civilian shop be? Could it be some kind of secret code? Each person can only buy 1 bottle a day. Nalan Ying watched as Fang Qi replied casually. I knew it. Nalan Ying narrowed his eyes. To him, the only reason a small shop like this wouldn't sell a drink for 3 crystals was because it was a secret code. It seems like there are many secrets in this shop that I don't know about. However, in the next second, he saw Lan Yan sit down, happily sipping the bottle of drink in her hand. Her expression was as content as it could be. Lan Yan enjoyed the aftertaste for a while before taking another tiny sip. Then, she begged, Sir. Ms. Nalan is injured, can't you accommodate us and let me bring her a bottle? Fang Qi rolled his eyes at her and said, No, rules are rules. You're so petty. Lan Yan glared at Fang Qi with discontent. Nalan Ying looked at Lan Yan with shock on his face, mostly because her expression didn't look fake. But the problem was, could the drink of a tiny shop really taste that good? Is the owner of the shop really that hard to deal with? Did someone from the Nalan family really just beg the owner of a small shop? Moreover, the owner didn't agree? Are they putting on a show? He felt his intelligence was being put to the test. Oh, right. Just then, Lan Yan asked again, Ms. Nalan asked me to ask you something. Yesterday, you said masters could keep Nalan Ji in the sky. Is there someone else who is more skilled with guns and rockets than you are? Upon hearing this, Nalan Ying froze. He pretended to be resting on a seat but was actually listening intently. Guns and rockets? Masters? He was sure he had obtained extremely important information. Just then, a man wearing black robes sat down beside Nalan Ying. His entire face was covered by the hat of his cloak. It seemed like this man was trying to listen to Fang Qi and Lan Yan's conversation as well. They looked at each other and seemed to recognize each other's identity. However, Fang Qi began talking, so they immediately sat up in their seats and stuck out their ears. Who else is more skilled with guns and rockets than I am? Fang Qi rubbed his chin and said, I'm sure a lot of people are. Are you telling me that they all know how to use those weapons like you do? Lan Yan stared at Fang Qi in disbelief. Is this an easy technique to learn? Does that mean any master warrior could learn this technique? And as long as they had a good gun or rocket, they could defeat ancestral warriors? Nalan Ying and the black-clothed man listened intently. There's a special weapon master warriors can use to defeat ancestral warriors? Are you talking about delivery gun? Fang Qi asked. Not a lot of people know how to do that. Then, Fang Qi began explaining to Lan Yan what delivery gun was. An hour later. So, the technique he used last night is called delivery gun. Inside a tastefully decorated courtyard was a wall with red bricks and white tiles. If one were to climb over the wall and follow the gravel path into the courtyard, they would see neatly mowed green grass and pear trees that were planted in an orderly fashion. The pear tree was lush and green. It was obvious that the owner had taken great care of it. That voice came from the room facing the north. Nalan Mingxiu's face was still pale. She held a bowl of medicine in her hands and slowly sipped at it. She was injured badly last night and was still in recovery. Therefore, she had no choice but to stay in her room all day, listening to Lan Yan talk about the matters of the outside world. The owner said he couldn't completely put the rocket's powers into use either. The true strength of the rocket is that it can send the target anywhere through impact, that's why it's called delivery gun. Who else knows guns and rockets better than Fang Qi? Nalan Mingxiu took a small sip of her medicine, furrowing her eyebrows at the bitter taste. I thought those weapons only existed in Resident Evil. He said they existed in real life. Lan Yan sat down by Nalan Mingxiu's bedside and placed her hands on her rosy cheeks. He said that a master named Yeshiu invented the technique. Master Yeshiu? A master of guns and rockets? No. The owner said that master is skilled in martial arts and is an expert in all weapons, including daggers, spear, swords, and staffs. He is dubbed the battle god and created a magical weapon called the Myriad Manifestation Umbrella. Lan Yan looked at Nalan Mingxiu as admiration filled her eyes. How can a person who is so highly attained in guns and rockets exist in this world? Moreover, he is an expert in daggers, spear, swords, and staffs. His title is Battle God. Nalan Mingxiu froze as she repeated what Lan Yan just said. It's obvious that Fang Qi made up the title by himself. How can you believe something like that? No one like that has ever existed in Dajin. You think it's a lie? Lan Yan's eyes rolled around, not completely convinced. But the owner told me a story about that master, could he have made that up? I'll know if it's fake once I hear the story, Nalan Mingxiu said faintly as she sipped her medicine. Go ahead. Okay. Lan Yan looked up at the ceiling as she thought back at what Fang Qi told her. Then, she imitated the way he talked. Friend, have you ever heard of glory? At the same time, inside the main hall of the Nalan family, Master. Nalan Ying got down onto one knee, his voice was filled with respect. Master, my investigation is finished. The name of the shop is Origins Internet Club, and there are 2 games in the shop, Resident Evil 1 and Diablo 2. Ms. Nalan visits the shop every day to play games. I also found out that the shop owner used a weapon called the rocket launcher to severely injure Nalan Ji last night. It's very special and powerful, and he used a technique called delivery gun, Nalan Ying said in all seriousness. Apparently, a master named Yeshiu created this technique. It is a skill that can only be employed when using this weapon. Nalan Hongyu suddenly opened his eyes. He felt like his brain had become so rusty that it wasn't working anymore. What in the world? Have I been cooped up and living a secluded life for so long that I'm not aware of anything new that has been happening in the outside world? The owner also revealed some information about that master named Yeshiu, but I don't know if it's true or not. What information? Nalan Hongyu's expression changed. He had never heard of words like rocket launcher or delivery gun, so he found it hard to believe the validity of what he just heard. However, if solid information could back this up. This is what the shop owner said. Friend, have you ever heard of glory? Then, Nalan Ying began telling Nalan Hongyu Fang Qi version of the king's avatar. Putting its validity aside, the story itself was extremely fascinating. After all, they've never heard of a story that used gaming as its theme. A game like that was extremely new and unique to people like them. Right? Right? Yeshiu is strong, right? Lan Yan exhaled and exclaimed happily upon seeing that Nalan Mingxiu had accepted the fact that the story was real. The latter gently nodded her head. I really wanted to keep listening, but that awful owner stopped and went back to playing his game. Lan Yan complained, I feel bad for a master like Yeshiu. He was betrayed by his own party and became a lone soul. I wonder if he went back in the end. Achoo! Fang Qi was playing his game when he sneezed. After innocently scanning the room, he muttered to himself, is someone talking about me? I was in a good mood and told her a portion of the king's avatar. I wonder if that girl took the story seriously. The entire hall fell into silence after they heard Nalan Ying retell the story. The silence was horrifying, as if it were the calm before a storm. How much of what you said do you think is real? After a long time, Nalan Hongyu finally asked as he emphasized each word. He was clenching his teeth and suppressing his anger. If Nalan Ying hadn't worked under him for so long, Nalan Hongyu would seriously suspect that this man was trying to humiliate his intelligence. That's what I thought as well. I thought most of the things that the owner said was made up. Nalan Ying began to sweat. He knew how scary the old man was when he was angry. Right now, the old man was on the verge of an anger explosion. He felt like if he said anything else carelessly, he would be thrown into the backyard and fed to the dogs tomorrow. Therefore, he quickly described to Nalan Hongyu how he felt while trying out Diablo 2 at Fang Qi Internet Cafe. By the time he finished, Nalan Hongyu couldn't sit still in his seat anymore. He squinted his eyes and sank into deep thought. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth. His voice sounded hoarse, like pieces of old tree bark rubbing against each other. Do you think I'm too old, and can't catch up with the world anymore? Nalan Ying lowered his head, not sure how to respond to this. After hearing Nalan Ying's description, Nalan Hongyu said, "Get me a computer." He sounded excited and was filled with anticipation as he said, "I've lived for a long time, but this is something I've never heard of. Go, let me experience this magical spiritual artifact." Although he had seen all walks of life, he had never heard of a spiritual artifact as special as this. "Yes, sir. If it's necessary, you can summon and command the shadow guards," the old man slowly added. Nalan Ying's entire body shook. "I won't disappoint you, sir." At this moment, inside a luxurious courtyard with a lotus pond, there was a middle-aged man sitting in an elegant pavilion that was at the end of a row of carved pillars. The middle-aged man was wearing a golden robe, which accentuated his handsome looks. He was twirling a small, delicate glass cup in his hand, and the amber liquid inside swayed as it reflected colorful light. He looked into the cup and said casually, "You've really disappointed me this time." Standing at the edge of the pavilion was a man wearing a black robe. He had a short goatee on his chin and was about the same age as the other man. His back was facing the man in the golden robe, and his hands squeezed the railings so hard that the stone railing seemed to have sunk lower into the ground. "I've ordered my people to investigate into the owner of the shop who interfered with our business last night. That was just an accident." The man in the golden robe drank all the wine in his cup and said lightly, "Brother Nalan, you should know that's not what I want to hear. The only thing I care about is the result. How else can I explain things to my father?" Then, he stood up and patted Nalan Ji on the shoulder before leaving. After he left, Nalan Ji squeezed the railing so hard that it suddenly shattered into a million pieces. Then, he turned around, revealing his icy expression. Nalan Ying came to Fang Qi Internet Cafe again, but this time, he was dressed differently. Before, he looked very much like a normal person. However, he now emitted confidence and prestige, his square face making him seem angular and decisive. Behind him was a middle-aged army officer. "Lord Ying." This officer treated Nalan Ying with respect. "What are we doing here?" "We're buying something," Nalan Ying replied. "Buying something?" The middle-aged army officer froze as he looked at the alley in front of him. "Here." Then, he saw the sign above the shop. "Origins Internet Club." "You know this place?" Nalan Ying asked. "I don't." The army officer shook his head and smiled. "But my people reported that over the last few days, a couple of young masters in the city missed curfew because they were at this shop. I knew those people were all of high statuses, so I didn't look into it." Nalan Ying nodded and walked in. Fang Qi saw Nalan Ying and felt like he had seen this man before. However, he really couldn't remember where. Generally speaking, people with this kind of temperament were eye-catching no matter where they were. It was weird that Fang Qi couldn't remember who he was. Confused, he walked up to Nalan Ying and the officer as he asked, "Are the two of you here to play games?" Nalan Ying shook his head. "We're here for business." "Business?" Fang Qi repeated unhappily as he pointed at his blackboard. "I only do business that is written on the blackboard. There's nothing else to talk about." "Say that again, kid." The middle-aged army officer, who was standing next to Nalan Ying, shouted, "I can close down your shop tomorrow if I want to." Nalan Ying smiled and said, "This is Gong He, Deputy Commander of the City Guards. I'd like to buy a computer from you. It's not a loss for you, so I suggest that you agree." "Money's not an issue." Gong He sneered as well. "You should be honored that Lord Ying is interested in something here and learn how to tell good from bad." Fang Qi face fell. "Are you threatening me?" "We're not." Nalan Ying smiled as he pulled on his sleeves. "Then," he said with confidence, "I am stronger and more powerful than you are at the moment, so you have to admit defeat." Gong He glanced over at Nalan Ying. After seeing the latter nodding, he continued, "If you don't agree to sell the thing called the computer, I'm going to close down your shop." Gong He. Just then, a person stood up from the second computer in the first row. His expression was arrogant and icy, and he was wearing a silver hairpin. "Who dares to call me by my name directly?" Gong He turned around and saw An Cheng's icy face. "What do you think you're doing?" An Cheng asked angrily. "Young Master An." Gong He was immediately dumbfounded by who he saw. This shop was extremely secluded, and it was in the civilian district. Gong He was ordered by his higher-ups to go buy something with this prestigious mid-aged man. But, why is the young master here? Gong He's brain stopped working for a second. "Why, are you here, young master An? Do I have to report to you?" An Cheng shouted, "Get out! Get out!" Gong He began to sweat as he pointed at Nalan Ying and then back at An Cheng. One man was his big boss's son, and the other one was from the force that his boss didn't even dare to offend. What was he supposed to do? "Deputy Commander Gong," Nalan Ying smiled, "since young Master An asked you to leave, you should leave." An Cheng, on the other hand, glanced at Nalan Ying and asked in a low voice, "Who are you? How dare you summon the city guards without permission?" The city guards were crucial to the defense of Zhuhua City. Normal people didn't have the authority to move them. Nalan Ying laughed as he removed the leather glove on his right hand. "Young Master An, you don't have to know who I am." "It seems like this shop isn't as simple as it looks," Nalan Ying murmured. His action of removing his glove seemed like a secret code. The city guards retreated immediately, and the doors of Fang Qi shop suddenly blew wide open. A breeze blew into the internet cafe as the ambience inside became dreary. The temperature suddenly dropped. Black shadows shot into the shop one after another and an icy and murderous sensation spread through the entire internet cafe. All the players exited the games and glanced over, wanting to know what was going on. Then, they saw 2 rows of guards, each wearing a set of black armor and standing by the door of the shop. These people were all wearing black ghost masks and holding giant crossbows. The first row of guards was squatting while the second row was standing. Their crossbows emitted a dangerous and vigorous aura, and the triangle-tipped arrows were extremely threatening. The guards aimed their crossbows at the shop, and An Cheng suddenly felt an icy chill shoot up his spine, all the way to his head. "These are..." An Cheng suddenly remembered reading a record of these giant crossbows and exclaimed, "Immortal slaying crossbows." These were super weapons that were used during Dajin's founding war. It was one of the more horrific war weapons that ever existed. Apparently, each string of the crossbow was made of 1,000-year-old dragon veins, and the tip of the arrows were made of the sharp teeth of powerful demon beasts. The crossbows were designed by Lu Fuzi himself, the top artifact forger of Dajin. Self-protective spiritual artifacts used by cultivators were as weak as paper in front of these weapons. When the founding emperor was fighting the enemies, he was once surrounded by almost 10,000 cultivators. His elite guards used these weapons to launch a surprise attack against their enemies, killing more than half of the high-level cultivators and successfully breaking out of encirclement. That battle became Dajan's most classic example of the weak winning against the powerful. How can so many immortal slaying crossbows appear at the same time? An Cheng's head went blank. Although he knew that these crossbows weren't as powerful as they used to be, being pointed at by them was still horrific. Even though An Cheng and some of the others were all cultivators, they were still scared. In the entire southeast region of the empire, not even the Castellans owned weapons like this. There was only one powerful force that was equipped with these crossbows. You are. By now, An Cheng had figured out which family this man was from. If he remembered correctly, the leader of the elite guards was from the Nalan family. My name is Nalan Ying answered casually. An Cheng's body froze as he began to regret kicking Gong He out of the shop. Why in the world would a small shop like this offend a great power like the Nalan family? During the Founding War, Nalan Ying was already a level 8 ancestral warrior and was a part of the elite guards. How powerful is he right now? Since he is here, then it is clear who is behind all this. An Cheng thought. Even An Cheng's father had to step aside in front of people like Nalan Ying. No wonder Gong He treated this man with such respect and even sucked up to him. Now, can we talk about you selling one of your spiritual artifacts? Nalan Ying sneered. The Nalan family rarely appeared before other famous families, but their fame and power didn't fade away, not even a little bit. Fang Qi glanced over at An Cheng's expression and turned back around as if nothing was going on. He asked, "Can you put away your scrap metal? You're scaring my customers." Hey! Nalan Ying froze, and Fang Qi continued in all seriousness, "Or else, I will assume that you're causing trouble." An Cheng? Ouyang Cheng? Butch? Everyone in the shop was dumbstruck. After all, Nalan Ying wasn't a second or third generation heir of a powerful person like Xiao Yulv. He was a legendary individual who participated in the Founding War that happened centuries ago. Did Fang Qi just ask him to put away his scrap metal? Is he crazy? I know that a powerful cultivator is supporting your shop. Nalan Ying nodded. Not everyone can defeat someone like Su Fuwei. But... He pointed at the shadow guards and said, "Do you know what cultivators call the shadow guards of the Nalan family?" Cultivator killers. He answered his own question in a low voice. Someone's causing trouble. Fang Qi turned around and pulled out his chair. He was planning to sit back down in front of his computer. Nalan Ying was confused by Fang Qi words and actions. Many troublemakers have been detected, lightning tribulation activated. Then, they heard an extremely loud rumble. Crack! A white light flashed before the shop. Then, everyone saw something spectacular, the Shadow Guard breakdance crew. Nalan Ying's expression was as splendid as it could be. Nalan Mingxiu sat on her soft bed and listened to the newest report Lan Yan brought her. She was a little dumbstruck by what she heard. Did I really try to take the shop for myself? She was relieved that she was someone who made plans before acting upon them. She wasn't in such a hurry to achieve results, or else her ending would have been the same as Xiao Yulv, Su Fuwei and Nalan Ying. She quietly closed her eyes, and her long eyelashes shook slightly. "Tell them to stop investigating the shop," she said. After passing Resident Evil 1, players like Song Qingfeng and Su Zixin began testing out the new game, Diablo 2. Those who first started playing all had the same thoughts in their minds. The game was fun, new and good for training. However, once the players slowly evolved from newbies into experienced gamers, they would be attracted by different aspects of the games because their interests and hobbies were different. An Cheng and his friends were obsessed with obtaining additional skill points. Li Haoran looked into different items and gear, and young girls like Su Zixin and Shen Qingqing liked to dig deep into the plot of Diablo 2, searching for the hope amidst the despair. After reading so many novels that praised the heroes and made their endings happy, the dark theme of Diablo seemed sharper and more interesting. If one were to pay close attention to the plot, they would notice that from the first scene, the player would hear about and even interact with former heroes. However, each and every one of those heroes were met with miserable fates. Their fates were so miserable that the player would wonder if there was really hope left in this world. The two girls, Su Zixin and Shen Qingqing, recorded important and plot-related dialogue in their little silver notebooks. After reaching their playtime limits, they often sat in the resting area to the right of the playing area and flipped through their notebooks, trying to figure out the plots and clues they uncovered in the game. It was as if they were flipping through the treasures they spent so long trying to obtain. Zixin, take a look, this is the story of Blood Raven, who we fought today. Shen Qingqing only began playing Diablo today, so she was interested in the story. Kaxia and Akara said that Blood Raven used to be a heroine who helped in defeating Diablo. Oh, this is the information I got from Song Qingfeng on Tristram and Deckard Cain. Oh, I heard rumors about the Dark Wanderer everywhere in the encampment. She said with excitement. If we can piece the puzzles together, I'm sure the story's going to be amazing. Su Zixin frowned. Too bad that we don't know much of the plot yet. At most, we can only piece together the beginning. If our progress is the same as the owner's, perhaps we can write an entire novel. You're right. Shen Qingqing closed her notebook with a dejected expression on her face. Then, her face lit up. Why don't we ask the owner about the things that happen later on in the game? It's a good idea. Su Zixin said, but the dull owner only plays games and makes money, he doesn't care about anything else. I wonder if he'll even help us. Let's go try first. The two of you want to know the plot, so you can piece everything into a complete story. After Su Zixin and Shen Qingqing explained to Fang Qi what they wanted, he looked at them with surprise and laughed in his head and thought, they sure are loyal fans of the plot. Are you writing an official novel? Fang Qi came to a sudden realization. Isn't restoring the entire plot the same as writing an official novel for the game? Official novel? Confused, the two girls looked at Fang Qi and asked, what's an official novel? Is it different from traditional novels? An official novel is one that tells the plot of the game, and it can be released by the creator of the game or done by other authors who gets the copyright. After Fang Qi explained to them what official novels were, their expressions lit up. We can do that. They looked at Fang Qi with surprised expressions. All they wanted to do was restore the plot, so they could read the stories. But thanks to Fang Qi words, they realized that they could sell the story to the public. Su Zixin used to only read novels during her spare time, her favorite novel was Celestial Warrior. However, Celestial Warrior and all the other popular novels on the market were similar. They were of similar worlds, similar backgrounds, and similar martial arts techniques, they lacked novelty. If this novel wasn't somewhat interesting in some aspect, and if there were other entertainment options in this world, she would have given up on the book a long time ago. Diablo 2, however, was a story she had never heard of. From the setting of the world was based on sword and magic, and concepts like angels and demons were completely different from the current mythical system of this world. Moreover, the dark world views of the game kept the players guessing how this world was going to turn out to be, right until the very end. If a story like this could be written into a novel, I will be the first to buy and read it. Su Zixin couldn't control her excitement and exclaimed with anticipation. As the daughter of an influential family, she didn't need to make money. All she cared about was whether the novel was good or not. She only just began discussing this idea with Fang Qi and Shen Qingqing, but she was already excited to read the official novel. Therefore, they looked at Fang Qi with anticipation. Fang Qi believed that writing an official novel was a great opportunity to promote his internet cafe. After all, the system said that the shop owner couldn't go out and get customers since it was beneath him. Creating an official novel would be much better than sitting in front of the computer and playing games all day, even if they only sold the novel in Zhuhua City. Sir, what do you think about this? Shen Qingqing, a loyal fan of the plot, was incredibly interested. Fang Qi sank into deep thought. Indeed, an official novel was something he hadn't thought of before. If you don't have any plans yet, Shen Qingqing asked with anticipation, can you hand this task over to me? You too. Fang Qi looked at Su Zixin and Shen Qingqing with a worried expression. Sure, the girls were beautiful, but writing a novel required skills. Qingqing is a talented girl. Su Zixin commented unhappily as if she saw right through Fang Qi worries. What are you talking about? Song Qingfeng and the others walked up to them upon seeing the three of them engaged in a heated discussion. Don't worry. Su Zixin leaned back on her computer chair and closed her eyes in satisfaction. She smiled and said, we're talking about publishing an official novel for Diablo 2. What? A novel for Diablo 2? Song Qingfeng exclaimed, compared to Resident Evil 1, Diablo 2's storyline was much broader. Moreover, since the game gave the players more freedom to explore, they paid less attention to the plot. However, that didn't mean Diablo 2's plot wasn't interesting, there were just way too many interesting aspects of the game. Therefore, upon hearing that they were going to publish a novel, they were immediately interested. When Brethren, Buletinche and the others were talking about the skills in the game when he turned around and pointed at Fang Qi. The owner said that he's going to publish a novel for Diablo 2. What's the storyline of Diablo 2? An Chang froze. I only paid attention to the items and skills and completely ignored the plot. Stuff like demons and angels. My focus is on the combat, and I also didn't really listen to what the game was talking about. It's interesting though, the plot is more original than the popular novels we have right now. Wu Yangchang chimed in, should we buy one when it comes out? Let's ask the owner when the novel will be published. Buletinche added. I know that Blood Raven used to be a heroine, and Tristram was destroyed by the demons. I have no idea why everything happened. If that's the case. They glanced at each other and wondered, are we really able to read stuff like that? I kind of want to read it. Before, novels weren't worth reading because they were all just unrealistic fantasies. But for the first time in their lives, they were interested. Inside the grand hall of the Nalan family, Nalan Hongyu slowly opened his eyes and asked, did you bring a computer back? I'm useless. Nalan Ying lowered his head. Nalan Hongyu's eyes emitted a dangerous light as he asked and emphasized each word, what happened? I thought I told you to bring the shadow guards. At the mention of this, Nalan Ying couldn't help but think back to the shadow guards break dancing outside the internet cafe. He replied with a long face. He is too strong. I don't even know when he did it, but the shadow guards were annihilated. They were all struck to the ground by a lightning technique. Lightning technique. Nalan Hongyu repeated with a grim expression on his face, the lightning technique of cultivators gathers the lightning from the heavens and earth, but there are usually clear signs of such a strike beforehand. How come the shadow guards weren't able to dodge it? The opponent, Nalan Ying said as he clenched his teeth, didn't show any signs of attacking. No signs. Nalan Hongyu stroked his white beard and murmured, so, you're saying that the cultivator used his own spiritual powers to create lightning and took down the shadow guards in the blink of an eye? A cultivator like that is bound to be in the divine ocean realm. He then closed his eyes again and said, a cultivator like that isn't someone you can defeat. It's not your fault. I'm sorry. But, why wasn't there news that a divine ocean realm cultivator came to Zhuhua City? No one in the Jiangnan region had heard about this. Nalan Hongyu asked, does this person not care about money or fame? Although the Nalan families wasn't as powerful as it used to be, it was still more than enough to deal with a small shop without having to engage in a fight. After all, money and fame were things that everyone wanted, right? Nalan Ying shook his head and said, reasonably speaking, someone who would open a shop would want money, but the owner is extremely rule-abiding and never bends them for anybody. Customers who break the rules are never welcomed back. That's why there was no room for negotiations. Oh. Nalan Hongyu was aware that some powerful people had weird tempers. For example, back then, he went through a lot of trouble trying to persuade Lu Fuzi to design the immortal slaying crossbow for the Dajin Empire. If the owner of this little shop was really powerful, Nalan Hongyu wouldn't be so surprised by all the rules. Therefore, he asked, "Are the computers in the small shop really as magical as you say they are?" "I didn't exaggerate at all," Nalan Ying said. "If that's the case, then I'll go check it out for myself and find out who's behind all this." Nalan Hongyu had been living in seclusion for a while, only because he wasn't interested in anything anymore. However, if computers were really that special, he might as well check them out. Of course, if they weren't that special, he was going to make the owner pay for it. Nalan Ying looked up in shock. "Family leader. You're going to go yourself?" Nalan Hongyu stood up from his seat. He was an old man who had a little hunched back, and his hair and beard were all snowy white. "I'll also show those people that I'm not dying just yet," he said as an icy glare flashed through his eyes, making goosebumps appear on Nalan Ying's body. Nalan Hongyu opened his mouth and said, "Elder Fu. Here." Another old man with white hair walked out from behind the hall. He was tall and strong-looking, meticulously dressed in a white robe with golden edges. "Get the carriage ready." "Will do." "Family leader. Are you really going?" Nalan Ying's body shook. After all, the family leader of the Nalan family had been cooped up inside the Nalan family for more than a decade. Is he really going out, just to check out a small shop? While Nalan Ying hesitated, the two elders already walked out of the grand hall. Shen Qingqing was a newbie to the game, so she wasn't as clear on the plot as Fang Qi. Their plan to write an official novel was about to be put into action, and Fang Qi agreed to let her write the small part of Act I. By the time he finished describing parts of the plot in extreme detail, the sun was slowly setting, and the sky was darkening. The proud sunlight was just about to disappear from the sky when Fang Qi saw 4 single-horned beasts that looked like horses stop in front of his shop. The beasts were pulling a luxurious cart. These horses were not at all ordinary, they emitted a strong aura and prestige. Unicorns? Fang Qi suddenly thought of this mythical creature, but the beasts in front of him were black. Unlike the mythical unicorns, they looked much fiercer. They were demon beasts. Powerful demon beasts that were tamed. The person driving the cart was a big, tall elder wearing a white robe with gold edges. He stopped the cart and then opened the door of the cart. Another thin elder slowly got off, holding a black cane in his hand. Fang Qi couldn't tell what the cane was made of. Is this the shop Ying was talking about? Nalan Hongyu looked around. Aside from its unique design, nothing else about this shop attracted his attention. Fang Qi, on the other hand, froze upon seeing the elders outside his door. Aren't they a little too old to play games at an internet cafe? The elder who walked in the front was skinny, but he had thick bone structure and a plump forehead. His solemn expression and meticulous movements gave others a sense of a powerful presence. The aura he emitted was different from officials who were rewarded a lot of treasures after wars. The latter showed off their new nobility with utmost arrogance, while this man looked like someone who was born to be a nobleman. Prestige ran in his blood. Everything about this old man proved that he wasn't someone of ordinary status. The tall and big elder behind him pushed open the glass doors. Then, that elder bowed down and waited on the side. Nalan Hongyu walked in, and Elder Fu shouted, "Who's the owner?" Fang Qi pointed at the little blackboard and replied, "What would you like to play?" Elder Fu looked at Fang Qi up and down, all he saw was an ordinary young man. Therefore, he faintly waved his hand and said, "Tell the owner to come out here. My master would like to meet him." Fang Qi was at a loss for words. He had never seen people act with such high status. He frowned and said, I'm the owner of the shop, but I don't do meetings with my customers. Upon hearing this, Elder Fu's expression darkened, and Fang Qi immediately felt an overbearing pressure approaching him. With a grim expression on his face, Fang Qi said, if you're here to cause trouble, I'll have to deal with you like so. Elder Fu froze, surprised that Fang Qi's expression remained unchanged in front of the pressure he exerted. It was impressive for a young man his age. This shop really is something special. Elder Fu. Just then, Nalan Hongyu opened his mouth and said, let's go by the rules and check out the spiritual artifact they call computers, see if they're really that magical. Yes, Master. Kid. Nalan Hongyu pointed at the computer in front of him and asked, is this a computer? How do I use it? First, decide what you want to play, then I'll tell you how to use it, Fang Qi replied emotionlessly. Then. Diablo. The elder tapped his cane on the small blackboard. It's simple. Just as Fang Qi was about to explain to them how to use the computers, the tall elder grabbed his right hand and smiled. Kid, I'd like to make things clear first. If the spiritual artifact here is really that magical, then fine. But if it isn't, a simple apology isn't going to cut it. Another person who doesn't know anything. As soon as he finished speaking, a voice filled with disdain muttered, don't be shocked by what you will see. Upon hearing this, Elder Fu's face darkened. The person who said that was An Cheng. He and his friends heard that the owner was publishing an official novel, and they listened to Fang Qi when he told Shen Qingqing about the plot. Right now, An Cheng and others were discussing it amongst themselves, and that was why they were still there. Nalan Hongyu sneered. They are just spiritual artifacts that create illusions. Why would I be shocked? In the past, he would have slapped a young man like An Cheng out of the room. But today, he didn't. To him and Elder Fu, Diablo 2 was just an illusion created by these spiritual artifacts that were called computers. The surroundings may seem real, but they are all fake. The cultivator who created spiritual artifacts like this is indeed powerful, but it shouldn't be that magical, they thought. Back then, when I barged into the blood-smelting faction's wild sand blood sea array and I saw a desert that stretched for miles and a bloody ocean that was endless. If my power was any lower, I wouldn't have made it out alive. Can a small spiritual artifact like this really compare to what I've been through? Nalan Hongyu snickered. Blood-smelting faction? Wild sand blood sea array? What are those? An Cheng and the others glanced at each other in confusion. Through Fang Qi guidance, the two old men finally began playing the game. Out of the two warrior classes, the paladin was more prestigious compared with the barbarian, so that was exactly who they picked to be. Upon seeing the animation on the computers, they nodded their heads in satisfaction. It's interesting. But it really is just a spiritual artifact that creates illusions. It may be able to fool normal people, but to us, this is nothing. However, when they entered Diablo world and began playing the game, the two of them looked at the lifelike world in front of them with dry mouths. They felt the howling wind and falling raindrops and saw the clouds in the sky, grass on the ground, and pedestrians on the streets. Is this really just an illusion creating spiritual artifact? As he looked through the memory of the paladin's backstory that suddenly appeared in his head, Nalan Hongyu felt like he had been reborn into another world. Everything felt so real. What was different was that this place possessed everything that a world needed. It wasn't an unstable world within an illusion where only boring elements like sand, oceans, and flames existed. Good day. It's nice to meet you, prestigious paladins, a pedestrian dressed in weird clothing greeted them, shocking them to their cores. It's impossible. Impossible. Nalan Hongyu was stunned as he muttered to himself, how can there be an illusion this realistic? He carefully asked the man in front of him, you are? My name is Wariv. As you can see, I am a caravan leader. Nalan Hongyu and Elder Fu were completely dumbstruck as they talked with this NPC. Is this really just an illusion? It feels like a real world. It is shocking that a spiritual artifact can take things this far. Neither of them had seen or even heard of anything like this. Their disdain quickly turned into shock. Through talking to Wariv, they slowly understood the background of the world they were in. At that moment, they felt like they were young paladins from the west, seeking adventure by helping this encampment which was hanging by a thread. Yes, young paladins instead of old men. Fu, when was the last time that we fought side by side? Nalan Hongyu felt his body being injected with youthful energy. Outside the internet cafe, he was a dying old man. But inside the internet cafe, he was a young man in his 20s or 30s with a body made of steel. He waved his weapon in the air, stirring up a sharp wind and creating whistling sounds within the encampment. I think, a few hundred years ago, Elder Fu took in deep breaths of fresh air as the weapon in his hand shook with his hands. His strong physique and high spirit made him feel like a man in his 20s or 30s as well. That was when he first stepped his foot into the chaotic world back then. As elders who had been through bloody wars and fought all over the region, they never lost their pride and passion. However, the empire was now peaceful and didn't need heroes anymore, so they had nowhere to place their sentiments and aspirations. Therefore, they had to live the rest of their lives in seclusion and hand the future over to their successors. Nalan Hongyu looked up and howled, "My long sword will sweep away all obstacles. Do you have what it takes to bathe in blood with me again?" Upon hearing this, Fang Qi face twitched as he thought, can the elderly suffer from 8th grader syndrome as well? TL note, Chinabiya is a Japanese colloquial term that translates to middle school second year syndrome or 8th grader syndrome, typically used to describe early teens who have delusions of grandeur, that desperately want to stand out, that they have convinced themselves they have hidden knowledge or secret powers. Wikipedia. No wonder he couldn't control his emotions. After almost an hour, those playing in the internet cafe were all youngsters or middle-aged people. No one had ever seen elders here. This made An Cheng and the others curious, so they glanced over in Nalan Hongyu's direction. "Elder, you've been playing for so long, but why haven't you used your attribute points?" "Elder, your skill points aren't used. Didn't you use any skills while playing?" "What's a skill point? What's an attribute point?" Nalan Hongyu was enjoying his battle when he was interrupted, so he replied angrily, "Don't bother me, or else I'm going to kick you out." An Cheng and his friends' expressions immediately darkened. "We were just trying to remind you that you need to learn skills. Why would you threaten to kick us out?" "Learn skills?" Nalan Hongyu, who hadn't used any skills throughout the game, glared at the young men beside him and said, "I've learned so many skills and techniques over the years, what else do I need to learn? Go away. I don't know where you kids came from, but stop bothering us." Elder Fu scolded, leaving An Cheng, Ouyang Cheng and Buletin Che completely speechless. After a while, "Fu, did you notice that the monsters in here are becoming more and more powerful?" Nalan Hongyu's character looked like he was in rough shape. Gulp, gulp. Elder Fu, who was drinking potions like crazy, only had a little bit of HP left. In Nalan Hongyu's screen was a blue carver that emitted lightning. It led a group of carvers, who shouted "Rakani Shu," as they chased them. "Am I going to die here today?" Nalan Hongyu shouted, "Fu, let's retreat. Our internal essence isn't strong enough. Let's train for 10 years first and come back to teach these monsters a lesson." After playing for a while, Fang Qi was just about to leave to buy some food when he saw the two elders' characters sitting inside a hostel. They were sitting cross-legged and were deep in meditation. "Hey!" Confused, Fang Qi walked up to them and said, "Elder, your stamina bar is full. Why are you meditating? Go away. I just encountered a powerful monster called Rakani Shu." Nalan Hongyu was annoyed by Fang Qi's sudden disturbance, so he snorted, "I need to cultivate for at least 10 more years to defeat it. Let me meditate for 10 years first." Elder Fu sneered, "The monster emits a giant ray of lightning when we tried to kill it, so we have to use our essence to fight it. If that wasn't the case, we would have killed it a long time ago. WTF? Fang Qi was dumbfounded. Are they really going to cultivate 10 years to defeat a Rakanishu? Who told you to do that? Kid, why aren't you speaking anymore? He's probably never encountered a monster as powerful as a Rakanishu. Fang Qi looked at them again and said, others can kill this monster with their eyes closed. Are you serious about cultivating for 10 years first? The two elders both froze, they also felt like something seemed off. We need to spend a decade to cultivate before playing a game? However, when they were fighting the monster, they calculated and were sure that if this monster existed in real life, they needed to train for at least 10 years before they could defeat it. How could this kid say that other players can kill the monster with their eyes closed? After all, they were almost smashed to death by that monster. Nalan Hongwu's face fell as he turned around icily. Fine, you show us how you can kill this monster with your eyes closed. What if you can't? Fang Qi face twitched. I'm level 18 already, so I can definitely kill a tiny boss that is level 3 or 4 easily. Want to bet on it? Nalan Hongwu smiled, he hadn't seen a young man as brave as Fang Qi in a while. I was just going to suggest a bet. I won't bully you. If you lose, tell the cultivator behind you to come out and talk to me. You, on the other hand, should go back to minding your own business. Fang Qi expression darkened. This old man sure talks arrogantly. What if you lose the bet? He asked a little unhappily. Do you really think that I would lose? Nalan Hongwu squinted his eyes. He had seen the powers of the Rakanishu. In the game, his powers were restricted. Even if the game didn't restrict people's power, a man as young as Fang Qi wouldn't even be able to run away from the carvers no matter how much warrior qi he possessed. Anything's possible. Fang Qi rolled his eyes and said, if the two of you lose, stop making a fuss in this shop. You have to behave just like the rest of the customers here. Nalan Hongwu froze, he didn't expect this young man to make a request like this. He thought Fang Qi would at least ask him for a reward or noble ranking since the Nalan family was of such high status. Even if this kid doesn't know my status, he could at least ask for a couple thousand crystals. However, to Nalan Hongwu's surprise, the request was so simple. Therefore, he answered without thinking, I accept your challenge. Come take a look for yourself. Fang Qi sat back down in his spot, teleporting himself to the stony field. You're a paladin as well. Upon seeing Fang Qi character, they looked at him in disdain. They were both paladins, so they were well aware of this character's capabilities. They watched as Fang Qi ran straight into the hurdle of monsters. Is he looking to die? They thought Fang Qi was going to die immediately upon seeing what he just did. However, before they could say anything else, what happened next left them dumbstruck. Fang Qi closed his eyes. Then, countless light hammers appeared, spinning around him. 1, 2, 3. In a short while, the light hammers transformed into hammer storm that circled Fang Qi. Rakanishu. Countless carvers howled in pain. With a loud rumble, the Rakanishu's body exploded. By the time Fang Qi reopened his eyes, countless corpses lied before him, leaving Nalan Hongwu and Elder Fu completely speechless. If this is the power of a paladin, what were we playing just now? What are the light hammers? Why haven't I seen anything like that? Nalan Hongwu blushed as he realized that he had just lost to someone significantly younger than he was. The good thing was that his real identity wasn't exposed yet. If others found out that the family leader of the Nalan family lost to a kid, they would definitely roll on the floor laughing. Thinking back at what he just said, Nalan Hongwu's face became redder than ever. He felt extremely embarrassed. He glanced over at Fang Qi, who didn't seem to think it was a big deal. This kid is kind, he didn't make fun of me. Nalan Hongwu sighed in relief upon realizing that Fang Qi wasn't going to obsess over what just happened. At the same time, Fang Qi opened his skill tree and pointed at the blessed hammer. It's this skill. Once you get to level 18, click on it, and you'll immediately know how to use it. Then, the two of them listened to Fang Qi and distributed their skills points and attribute points. They even equipped themselves with some blue magic items. You can practice martial arts like that. All I need to do is increase my level and get skill points and attribute points. Who came up with this? At that moment, Nalan Hongyu felt like he had jumped from ancient times to a modern world where everything was cutting edge. How could he ever suspect that an advanced spiritual artifact like this couldn't satisfy him? Phew! Let's go kill that monster. I need it to pay for chasing us. Just when they had finally familiarized themselves with the game and was about to go back in and kill the monster, Fang Qi said casually, "You've reached the playtime limit for the day. If you want to keep playing, come back tomorrow." Nalan Hongyu was speechless. Didn't he just think that this kid was kind? He was so immersed in the game and was just about to go on a killing spree when he was told that his time was up. Nalan Hongyu felt like spitting out blood. Is he kidding me? He really wanted to pull out his sword and strike Fang Qi.